Chapter 436. In the Grand Xia Empire, 2 years and 9 months had already passed since the last Heavenly Fate ranking battle. This meant that there were only 3 months left before a new Heavenly Fate ranking battle would be held. But now, there was a slight change in the ranking battle. Once, the location of the Heavenly Fate rankings was in the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. Sounding the drums, crossing the river of life and death, ascending the battle platforms, entering the Vermilion Bird Formation, seizing ancient luck and obtaining the secret arts. But now, the Vermilion Bird Formation was no longer the same as before. It was actually controlled by the Purgatory Vermilion Bird, the Vermilion Bird of Ancient Luck. Because of this, the transcendent powers of Ginkgo announced that the Heavenly Fate ranking battle would be held in the Venerate Heavens sect. Not only that, because of the lack of ancient luck, the 36 transcendent powers of Grand Xia would each take out an extraordinary treasure to bestow upon the 36 rankers of the Heavenly Fate ranking. Hence, after 3 years, the Ginkgo continent of Grand Xia was once again filled with waves of commotion. It was unknown how many young geniuses had entered Ginkgo, but because of the glory of the previous Heavenly Fate ranking battle, although the spectators were all excited, they didn't think that the ranking battle this time around would surpass the previous one. 2 years ago, the Heavenly Fate ranking battle was a golden age. Terrifying characters like Qin Wentian, Chen Wang, and Xiqiong appeared. And during this period of time, the situation in Ginkgo was exceptionally chaotic. Experts from the Pill Emperor Hall, Chen clan, and Hua clan were hunted down one after another, causing the spectators to feel the undercurrents of the undercurrents. And finally, on a certain day, an earth-shattering battle occurred in Ginkgo. After Bai Qing killed an expert from the Hua clan, she was intercepted by Hua Taishu. Although Bai Qing was powerful, she ultimately wasn't a match for Hua Taishu. At this moment, Ouyang Guangsheng, Chu Mang, Fan Lu, Qin Zheng, and Yun Mengyi all appeared, joining forces to fight against Hua Taishu. The geniuses of the 2 Heavenly Fate rankings engaged in an earth-shattering battle. It was just that Hua Taishu had entered the Heavenly Fate ranking earlier than them, and was also the top ranker of the previous batch. The strength of one's cultivation base could easily make up for the disadvantage in numbers. Hence, even though many geniuses joined forces, they were still heavily injured by Hua Taishu. But in the end, Hua Taishu was actually poisoned. No one saw who the culprit was, and no one knew where the poison came from. Because of this, the fear in the hearts of the crowd grew even stronger. There was only one name in the crowd, Mu Feng. These familiar names, after a lapse of almost 3 years, when the next Heavenly Fate ranking was about to be held, once again appeared in the eyes of the masses, and directly caused a huge uproar. The experts from the Hua clan and Qin clan arrived, but the experts from the Mystic Moon sect, Ouyang Aristocrat clan and Jiang clan arrived as well. Both sides had no way to come to an agreement and an intense battle ensued. The battle between the 5 transcendent powers ended in a tragic ending as everyone retreated. However, that oppressive aura enveloped the entire Ginkgo, as though a tempest would erupt at any moment. Not only that, from this battle, the spectators could see many things. The relationship between the Ouyang Aristocrat clan and the Jiang clan was getting closer and closer. Evidently, this was because of the upcoming wedding between Ouyang Guangsheng and Jiang Ting. From this, one could see how high Ouyang Guangsheng's status was. Most probably, he was already being nurtured as the successor of the Ouyang Aristocrat clan. At the same time, this battle caused the spectators to think of another name. The previous top ranker of the Heavenly Fate ranking, Qin Wentian, where was he now? Bai Qing, Ouyang Guangsheng, Chu Mang, Fan Lu, Qin Zheng, Yun Mengyi, Mu Feng, these geniuses all stood together because of Qin Wentian's existence. If Qin Wentian was here, what kind of scene would the battle between him and Hua Taishu be? That young man whose achievements were even more glorious than Hua Taishu's. Whenever the spectators thought of the battle between him and Hua Taishu, their hearts would involuntarily surge with emotions. However, such a battle was something they would never be able to witness in their entire lives. Although there were people who said that Qin Wentian, who had transformed into a great rock, hadn't died yet and might appear again one day, but as time flowed by, the majority of people no longer believed this. The majority of people all believed that back then in the Pill Emperor Hall, Qin Wentian had truly died, with not even his bones remaining. Bai Qing, Ouyang Guangsheng, Fan Lu and the rest would also think of Qin Wentian. This was especially so after the battle with Hua Taishu. Every time they stared at the skies, they couldn't help but to ask themselves, was he still there? Far away from Ginkgo, in the demon region of the desolate forest, a raging wind gusted by. Amidst the misty clouds, a great rock could be seen flapping its 3,000-meter-long wings, traversing a distance of 10,000 meters in an instant. On the back of this great rock, a handsome young man could be seen standing there with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were immeasurably deep, and there wasn't the slightest bit of aura exuding from him. However, the moment one laid their eyes on him, they would never be able to forget him. The great rock soared through the skies like a bolt of lightning, arcing through the vast territory of the demon continent. A day later, the great rock arrived at a city in the moon continent that was under the jurisdiction of the star-seizing manor. This city was merely a small one. 2 years ago, a transcendent power arrived here. Although they kept a low profile, the strength they displayed occasionally caused the hearts of many to tremble in fear. This transcendent power was none other than the White Deer Institute that was expelled by the star-seizing manor. They moved to this small city because they wanted to avoid calamity and at the same time, develop themselves. Over a year ago, Fairy Qingmei personally arrived and delivered the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia to the White Deer Institute, causing the doyens and patriarch of the White Deer Institute to be incomparably shocked. At the same time, they also received the news that Qin Wentian was still alive. They naturally understood the meaning behind the 9 ultimate arts. This was an opportunity for the White Deer Institute to develop further, but it was also an opportunity for them to be filled with courage. Over the past year, the White Deer Institute selected core disciples, silently nurturing them. At the same time, for those of the older generation who were absolutely loyal, they were allowed to choose the ultimate arts that were suitable for them, allowing them to develop in peace. As for the ultimate arts of Grand Xia, they were not allowed to be used in public. The White Deer Institute was waiting for the arrival of the young man who had once single-handedly ascended the Pill Emperor Hall. At this moment, in the training grounds of the White Deer Institute, the atmosphere was extremely lively. Many young men were sparring with each other. Bai Lu Yi was present as well. Currently, her cultivation base wasn't weak either, she had already broken through to the 9th level of Yuanfu. Silently observing the young men of the White Deer Institute, she couldn't help but think of the young man she once knew. At this moment, a raging wind gusted by. The spectators turned their gazes over only to see a terrifying great rock descending from the skies. In an instant, the entire training grounds were engulfed by the raging wind. The spectators couldn't even stand stably as they hurriedly shielded their eyes. An instant later, when the wind calmed down, the silhouette of the great rock hovered in the air above them. Its gigantic body blotted out the sun, and its sharp eyes swept over the crowd, exuding a majestic aura akin to a sovereign descending from the heavens. Great Rock. Upon seeing the great rock, the eyes of the crowd gleamed with sharpness as their hearts pounded. Bai Lu Yi's beautiful eyes shone with a brilliant light as she stared fixedly at the silhouette of the great rock. Had he really transformed into a great rock? Was he irreversible now? The raging wind gusted by as the experts of the White Deer Institute arrived. The elders of the various transcendent powers were all present as they stared at the great rock. Inclining their heads, they discovered that there was actually a young man standing on the back of the great rock. Although he was blocked by the great rock's gigantic body, the crowd couldn't help but to exclaim in admiration when they saw the aura he exuded. Why had the great rock brought him here? Who was this young man? At this moment, Bai Lu Yi slowly walked forwards, arriving below the great rock. Stretching out her hands, she wanted to caress the great rock's cheeks. The sharp gaze of the great rock remained, it didn't move to stop her. Bai Lu Yi's soft palms gently caressed the great rock's cheeks, yet the great rock didn't evade, appearing exceptionally calm. Little Yi. A voice rang out from the great rock's mouth, causing Bai Lu Yi's palms to tremble violently. Her eyes reddened as she stared at the silhouette of the great rock. Had he really become a demonic beast? Are you all right? Bai Lu asked, her voice trembling. I'm fine, the great rock replied. After which, he turned his gaze onto the others, his countenance turning sharp. At this moment, the young man on the great rock's back slowly walked to the side of the great rock's head. He then spoke, from today onwards, I will be in charge of the White Deer Institute. The gazes of those from the White Deer Institute froze as they stared at the young man before shifting their gazes onto the great rock. The great rock nodded, from today onwards, when you see him, it's the same as when you see me. His words are my words. The crowd was filled with bewilderment, they didn't know who this young man was, to actually be able to cause Qin Wentian, who was in the form of a great rock, to hand over authority to him. My name is Di Tian. From today onwards, I can announce to everyone in the White Deer Institute that all of you are descendants of the Azure Emperor, Di Tian. Not only that, I, Di Tian, will subjugate the Azure faction, merging them into a brand new transcendent power. From today onwards, all of you will have nothing to do with the White Deer Institute, and you must not reveal the existence of the Azure faction. I want a brand new transcendent power to emerge in Grand Xia. The figure on the back of the great rock slowly spoke, his tone incomparably arrogant. He actually wanted to create the 37th transcendent power. His ambitions were extremely great. When those from the White Deer Institute saw the great rock calmly watching everything unfold, they instantly understood in their hearts that the 9 ultimate arts that Fairy Qingmei had sent over were finally going to be executed. The White Deer Institute would vanish from the long river of history. This transcendent power, which had never caused too much of a commotion before, was about to disappear with the wind. Select the 3 strongest experts to come up and follow me. Di Tian spoke again, his tone as tyrannical as ever. The patriarch of the White Deer Institute nodded his head, and very swiftly, 3 old men were selected as they mounted the great rock. As for the others, head to the Demon Mountain City and head to the Celestial Lake Palace where Fairy Qingmei is located. Remember, break up into small groups and wait for me there. That brand new transcendent power will be established in the Celestial Lake Palace, Di Tian commanded. Di Tian spoke once again. Immediately, the wings of the rock flapped, and in an instant, it soared into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Bai Luyi's beautiful eyes flashed with a deep sorrow, as the memories of the past flashed through her mind. However, when he transformed into a great rock, his personality seemed to have changed as well. Could he still return to the past? Chapter 437. In the Grand Xia Empire, the great rock soared through the skies, traversing through countless territories in just a few days. The great rock in the clouds wanted to be the king of the skies. How terrifying was its speed! Even the winged dragon of the 9 heavens wouldn't be able to compete with it in terms of speed. After meeting with those from the White Deer Institute, Di Tian entered the base of the Zong clan and brought Zong Yi and the other 2 experts onto the great rock. Di Tian was naturally none other than Qin Wentian. It was just that the great rock and Qin Wentian couldn't appear at the same time. Hence, he used the secret art he obtained from Di Feng to change his appearance. As to why he was named Di Tian, it was because the Azure Emperor's surname was Di, signifying that he was the successor of the Azure Emperor. The word Tian was derived from the middle and last character of Qin Wentian. As for the Di Tian now, he was completely the same as the Qin Wentian of the past. He wasn't an avatar, but his true body. This was the tyrannical technique of the great Nirvana immortal art. Using the great rock to undergo nirvanic rebirth, manifesting a true self-body. Regardless of astral soul, cultivation base, bloodline, or even personality, everything was the same as the original body. There were no differences at all. The Di Tian who had undergone nirvana was none other than the Qin Wentian before he transformed into the great rock. However, his cultivation base had already risen to the 2nd level of Heavenly Dipper. After cultivating the great Nirvana immortal art, Qin Wentian also knew how terrifying this art was. To be able to materialize a true self-body, it wasn't an avatar. How heaven-defying was this? No wonder Qing told him not to reveal this. At this moment, he was thinking, what price did Qing pay exactly to obtain such a heaven-defying immortal art? Sadly, the great nirvana immortal art could only be used once. If not, if he wanted to materialize another time, he would truly die. Standing on the back of the great rock, Qin Wendian stared down at the sky. In front of him, there was a towering ancient mountain that pierced through the clouds. He glanced at the map in his hands and with an intention of his will, the great rock flew down from the sky. Di Tian and the great rock were both in their true bodies. Although they could cultivate in different directions, their hearts and minds were connected. They were two people, but at the same time, they were one person. The wind howled, and in an instant, the great rock landed at the foot of the ancient mountain. Qin Wendian raised his head and looked ahead as he spoke, "You guys wait here, great rock, follow me up." Qin Wendian spoke. Immediately, he and the great rock walked towards the ancient mountain. They didn't fly in the air, instead, they walked towards the top of the ancient mountain step by step. The path up the mountain was rugged, but to stellar martial cultivators, it wasn't difficult at all. Although Qin Wendian was slowly ascending, his speed wasn't slow at all. A human and a demonic beast soon arrived at the peak of the ancient mountain. Over there was a simple and crude house. Outside the house, an old man clad in tattered robes quietly sat on the ground, his face facing the sky. Qin Wendian and the great rock stood beside the old man, not saying anything. The old man also quietly sat there with his eyes closed, as though nothing had happened. After a long time, the old man's lips moved as he spoke, "Since you're here, why aren't you speaking?" "My name is Di Tian." Qin Wendian took out the Azure Emperor medallion as he slowly spoke. The old man fell silent. An instant later, he opened his eyes as he stared deeply at Qin Wendian and the great rock, before turning his gaze back to the Azure Emperor medallion. After which, he stood up and entered the house. Not long after, he walked out again, carrying a bundle on his back. "I heard that the punishment faction has experienced a great change in the past 1,000 years. Now, there's only one person left, yet he is still waiting here. Di Tian admires him greatly, hence he chose to walk up the ancient mountain." Qin Wendian slowly spoke. Walking up the mountain was a sign of respect. Although there's only one person, it's still a part of the punishment faction, passed down from generation to generation. Until now, the lightning punishment scepter is in my hands. Now, I'm willing to follow the young master of the D clan. The old man bowed to Qin Wendian. Momentarily, Qin Wendian nodded his head lightly. He turned and mounted the back of the great rock as he spoke, "Let's go." The old man was still clad in a coarse hemp robe. He slowly walked up the back of the great rock. The great rock spread its wings and soared downwards, descending the ancient mountain in an instant. Those from the White Deer Institute and Zong clan stared at the old man. They didn't know of the existence of the other party, and right now, they couldn't help but to seriously scrutinize him. Upon seeing the long bundle on the back of the old man, their countenances all changed after hearing the stories of the Azure Emperor Palace being passed down through the generations. Zong Yi asked, "Are you from the punishment faction?" The old man glanced at Zong Yi as a sharp gleam of sharpness flickered in his eyes. After which, he nodded his head lightly, "Seems like the sword's sect is still the same. Let's go." Qin Wendian's voice was as calm as ever. Everyone mounted the back of the great rock as they soared up into the air. Although the expressions of those on the back of the great rock were calm, they were all filled with shock in their hearts. After Qin Wendian passed the authority over to Di Tian, it seemed like Di Tian was preparing to replace Qin Wendian to take control of the Azure Emperor Palace. Di Tian wanted to unify the various hidden factions in the shortest amount of time possible. The great rock soared up into the skies once more. Before this, Qin Wendian had already asked Fairy Qingmei to investigate the situation of the various hidden factions. If not, he wouldn't have known that the punishment faction had encountered such a huge change. Now, he only needed to hold the Azure Emperor token in his hand and head there to take over the reins. The Spirit Continent was located in a remote corner of Grand Xia. The terrain here was extremely complicated, and the environment was extremely harsh. There were many treacherous grounds surrounding the Spirit Continent, and hence, the people within the Spirit Continent were all extremely valiant. Under such a harsh environment, it was easier for them to grow. In the northern region of the Spirit Continent, there was a world of ice and snow. This world of ice and snow was incomparably vast, and was known as the Arctic Ice Region. There were many treacherous grounds within, but for those who loved to cultivate in the mandate of ice and snow, this place was like a paradise to them. The Ice Spirit sect had a history of over 1,000 years in the Arctic Ice Region. The founder of the sect was a group of women, and gradually, the sect grew to a point where there were over 10,000 members. However, because the Ice Spirit sect had always kept a low profile, and had never provoked any other powers, they stood aloof from worldly affairs, and only focused on nurturing their own strength. Hence, although there were many powers that feared the Ice Spirit sect, because of the principles of the sect, none of them dared to make a move against the Ice Spirit sect. In the boundless Arctic Ice region, numerous ice palaces could be seen. Many female cultivators could be seen walking about, and all of them were clad in thin clothing, as though they weren't afraid of the cold. "Senior sister, look up there." At this moment, a female cultivator inclined her head and stared at the sky. Her beautiful eyes froze as an expression of shock appeared on her face. Above the clouds, there were actually 8 silhouettes descending from the skies, flying in the direction of the Ice Spirit sect. The person in the lead had an extraordinary demeanor. The 7 cultivators behind him all exuded the aura of experts, giving off a feeling that they were invincible. "Quickly report this to the sect." The silhouettes of these female cultivators flickered, and an instant later, the silhouettes in the air landed on top of an ice statue. Following which, more and more silhouettes appeared, and all of them were female cultivators. The Ice Spirit sect cultivated a cultivation art that was only suitable for females. "Who are you all?" At this moment, a middle-aged woman glanced at Qin Wentian and the others as she asked, "Where is the sovereign of the Ice Spirit sect?" Zhong Yi indifferently replied. His voice was calm, yet it was filled with sharpness, as though a surge of sword might permeated the air. "Sir, what business do you have with me?" At this moment, a silhouette drifted over from afar. Qin Wentian and the others turned their gazes over, only to see a female cultivator clad in snow-white robes slowly walking over. This female cultivator looked extremely young, only around 30 years of age. Her skin was as smooth as water, yet she exuded an intense coldness. "Azure Emperor." Qin Wentian's lips trembled as he transmitted his voice into her ears. Instantly, Bing Yuchan's countenance abruptly changed as she spoke, "Follow me." After speaking, she turned, as Qin Wentian and the others followed behind. Bing Yuchan brought them to an ice statue. This ice statue was extremely lifelike, it was actually a beautiful woman. "Is this the ancestor of the Ice Spirit sect, Bing Ling?" Qin Wentian glanced at the ice statue as he asked. The ancestor of the Ice Spirit sect couldn't forget the death of the Azure Emperor. Hence, she ordered her descendants to transform her body into an ice statue and place it here, engraving this enmity in her heart. If there's a day when the descendants of the Azure Emperor come here, they would personally destroy this statue. From then on, the Ice Spirit sect would no longer worship the ancestor, Bing Ling, and would only follow the descendants of the Azure Emperor. Bing Yuchan faintly spoke. Qin Wentian took out the Azure Emperor token. Bing Yuchan scrutinized it before bowing. Bing Yuchan greets young master. Senior Bing Ling's feelings for the Azure Emperor can be witnessed by the heavens and earth. Qin Wentian continued, "As long as this ice statue isn't destroyed, it will remain here forever. Choose the strongest 3 from the Ice Spirit sect and leave with me. After that, hand over the matters of the sect to those who can be trusted. Order the Ice Spirit sect to disband and head to the Celestial Lake Palace in the vast forest outside the Demon Continent. Fairy Qingmei is there." Upon hearing the name Fairy Qingmei, Bing Yuchan's countenance changed. But soon after, she nodded her head lightly. I will arrange it right away. After waiting for a period of time, Bing Yu-chan arranged everything properly. After which, she stood up together with Qin Wentian and soared into the air. When she saw the great rock, her eyes narrowed as a resplendent light gleamed in her eyes. However, she didn't ask too much. After mounting the great rock, Qin Wentian spoke, "My name is Qin Wentian. I'm sure you already know the true identity of the great rock. He is the true successor of the Azure Emperor, but now that he has transformed into a great rock, I will handle everything. There's no distinction between us. However, you have to remember, this matter is not to be leaked out of the sect. It's fine as long as the various branches of the Azure Emperor know of it." "Yes." Bing Yu-chan nodded her head in agreement. Qin Wentian didn't continue speaking. This trip could be said to be extremely smooth. The Ice Spirit sect didn't say anything and directly handed over the authority to the Azure Emperor. One of the reasons for this was because of their loyalty to the Azure Emperor, but another reason was because the people he brought along with him were all extremely powerful. If it was the same as back then when he entered the Moon Continent alone, entering the White Deer Institute, there wouldn't be such a situation. In the Grand Xia Empire, there was a country named Sky Thunder Country. Although this country wasn't part of the 9 continents, it was still a country with considerable power. Especially the royal clan of Sky Thunder Country, the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan. Previously, this country wasn't the Sky Thunder Country. But 800 years ago, the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan suppressed the royal clan, and after a great battle, they seized the country back into their hands. Only then did the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan change its name to Sky Thunder Country. And in the 800 years of history, the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan annexed 3 other countries, causing their strength to grow even more tyrannical. The royal clan of Sky Thunder was also extremely powerful. They recruited experts from all over the world and had many Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. Today, in the Sky Thunder Country, a few uninvited guests arrived. After Qin Wentian and the rest arrived, they didn't directly head towards the royal clan of Sky Thunder Country. Instead, they first went to the ruins of the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan. Staring at the ruins that had been completely razed to the ground, with not a single person remaining, a cold light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. Among the hidden factions of the Azure Emperor, some of them had already been destroyed. Now, other than those he had already subdued, there was only the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan left. However, it seemed that the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan didn't follow the Azure Emperor's will and wait here. Instead, they were plotting to grow stronger, and the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan became the Sky Thunder Country. As for the ruins on the map of the Azure Emperor token, there was actually no one left behind. This indicated that they treated the Azure Emperor's will as nothing, and the inflated Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan now had the ambition to soar higher and higher. Chapter 438. Zhong Yi's eyes flickered as he spoke in a low voice. The Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan seems to have violated the will of the Azure Emperor. How should we handle this? Thousands of years, who would be able to keep their promises? If the Azure Emperor was still here, he would surely feel gratified in his heart. The Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan was plotting to expand. Although they were in the wrong, their actions were pardonable. Uncle Zhong, follow me to the royal palace. As for the others, don't show yourselves for the time being. Let's see what attitude the Sky Thunder Aristocrat clan has towards the successor of the Azure Emperor. Qin Wentian slowly spoke, as the others behind him nodded their heads in agreement. Although Di Tian was arrogant and frivolous, he was also extremely open-minded. Let's go. Qin Wentian and the rest departed, moving towards the royal palace of the Sky Thunder Country. The royal palace of the Sky Thunder Country exuded a majestic aura. Standing outside the palace, there was an ancient pathway leading to the inner palace. Outside the city gates, there was a group of armored soldiers standing guard, exuding a sense of imposingness. Behind the city gates, there was also a 100-meter-tall watchtower. Standing on top of the watchtower, one could see everything in the surroundings. At this moment, on the ancient pathway, two silhouettes could be seen walking towards the royal palace. Although their steps seemed slow, they soon arrived at the entrance of the royal palace. Halt! Upon seeing Qin Wendian and Zhong Yi nearing, a soldier brandished his spear and pointed it at Qin Wendian and Zhong Yi. However, at the same moment, the silhouettes of the two silhouettes flickered as they vanished like a raging wind, directly soaring through the air, entering the royal palace in the blink of an eye. On top of the watchtower, lightning flashed as the sound of muffled thunder could be heard. Within the royal palace, several imperial guards madly sped towards them. Qin Wendian and Zhong Yi continued walking forward. When the soldiers arrived, Zhong Yi walked to the side of Qin Wendian as a surge of sword intent abruptly gushed forth from him. Instantly, a stifling sword might enveloped everyone, nobody dared to act recklessly. Who are the two of you? This place is an important location of the royal palace of the Sky Thunder country. If there's anything, please report it to us. A governor stood out, blocking the path of Qin Wendian and Zhong Yi. I want to see the Heavenly Thunder Monarch. Qin Wendian calmly spoke. Zhong Yi was still behind him. A terrifying sword might landed on the commander's head, causing cold sweat to appear on his forehead as his countenance turned pale. So strong, as a commander of the palace, with the cultivation base of the Heavenly Dipper Realm 5th layer, it cannot be said that it is not powerful, but the sword intent of Zhong Yi makes him feel suffocated. He watched as Zhong Yi walked forward step by step. Finally, his silhouette flashed and he dashed away in an instant. More and more experts appeared, but no one dared to block the path of Qin Wendian and Zhong Yi. Not long after, Qin Wendian stepped into the depths of the imperial palace. A group of people appeared in front of him, led by a young man and a young woman. The young man was handsome, wearing a golden crown and luxurious clothes. The young woman was beautiful, exuding a luxurious aura from head to toe. When she smiled, there was a hint of seductive charm, which was fascinating. Behind the two of them, there was a group of experts. The auras emanating from their bodies indicated that they were all extremely powerful characters. Why are you still not kneeling after seeing His Highness? An old man with a cold gaze berated Qin Wendian and the young man. His voice was filled with rage, and as he spoke, a long spear actually appeared in his hands, shooting straight towards Qin Wendian. Zhong Yi waved his hands as a sword light flashed, shattering the long spear. He then coldly spoke, "Let the Heavenly Thunder Monarch come forth to answer." Shameless boasting. The other person coldly spoke, staring at Zhong Yi. Although this person's cultivation base was high, his tone was a little too arrogant. He actually wanted the Heavenly Thunder Monarch to come forth. As for the prince, he had a smile on his face as he faintly spoke, "The two of you must be guests from afar. Please state your purpose clearly so that I can entertain the two of you." "You are the prince of the Heavenly Thunder Monarch?" Qin Wendian stared at the young man as he asked. "Yes." The young man similarly stared at Qin Wendian. He wanted to know the identity of these two uninvited guests, to actually dare to barge into the Heavenly Thunder Royal Palace. "Azure Emperor." A voice directly rang out in the ears of the young man. The smile in the young man's eyes finally changed as his pupils contracted. But an instant later, he regained his composure as he stated, "The two of you, please." After speaking, he stepped aside, his actions causing the people around him to be filled with bewilderment. Why did the prince suddenly become so polite? Qin Wendian and Zhong Yi didn't hesitate and directly walked forward. When the young man saw them walking past him, he commanded in a low voice, "Seal the entrance and exit of the Heavenly Thunder sect. No one is allowed to enter." After speaking, he instructed some of his subordinates to stay behind while the others followed behind him. Qin Wendian and Zhong Yi were brought to a public square in front of an ancient palace. This place was quiet and tranquil, it was suitable for them to do some things. At this moment, there weren't many people following behind the Prince of the Heavenly Thunder country, only 3 remained. However, the sound of footsteps could be heard from afar as another group of experts arrived. They all turned their gazes onto the prince as expressions of bewilderment could be seen on their faces. You actually know of the secret between the Azure Emperor and the Heavenly Thunder Country. The prince stared at Qin Wentian, his voice filled with coldness. The countenances of the people in the surroundings all changed as shock could be seen on their faces. They stared at Qin Wentian and Zhong Yi, their gazes filled with coldness. Those from the Heavenly Thunder Country, listen to my command. Qin Wentian retrieved the Azure Emperor token and stretched out his hand, displaying it to the eyes of everyone present. Momentarily, the countenance of the prince changed, but it was as though he had already guessed something. In an instant, his countenance returned to normal. The shock on the faces of the others was even more obvious. That was the Azure Emperor token. Father isn't here yet? That prince didn't bother with Qin Wentian's words, as though he was mumbling to himself, the Azure Emperor has already fallen for so many years, yet there are actually people who dare to borrow the Azure Emperor's name. They truly deserve death. As the sound of his voice faded, an intense killing intent flickered in his eyes. The Heavenly Thunder Country had been established for 800 years, but there was one thing that had been weighing down on their hearts. And that was none other than the Azure Emperor. As members of the hidden bloodline of the Azure Emperor, they had received orders to wait for the successor of the Azure Emperor. But as the Heavenly Thunder Country grew stronger and stronger, they became even more arrogant and bossy. They were the rulers of a country, yet they wanted them to submit to the successor of a dead man? How could they be willing? Today, the successor of the Azure Emperor had finally appeared. Since this was the case, they might as well make him disappear forever. Impudent! Zhong Yi stepped out as a terrifying sword might gushed forth. However, at the instant he stepped out, the people behind the prince all stepped out at the same time. They were all powerful experts, and it was clear that they were prepared for this. They had all communicated with the prince through voice transmissions. Are the others also planning to rebel against the Azure Emperor? Qin Wentian swept his gaze over. For some unknown reason, although the cultivation bases of these people were higher than Qin Wentian, when their eyes met Qin Wentian's, they could feel a coldness radiating from him. It was as though those eyes of his could penetrate through their hearts. The word he used was rebel. If the Heavenly Thunder Aristocrat clan was like the White Deer Institute back then, although they weren't willing to submit, they still treated the Azure Emperor with respect. However, this prince who was used to power and authority didn't merely refuse to listen to the Azure Emperor's orders. He wanted to silence the Azure Emperor. A dead man actually dares to use the word rebel? How laughable! The seductive young lady beside the prince leaned on him as she giggled. Her smiling eyes didn't have the slightest bit of respect for the Azure Emperor. She even used the word, dead, to mock the Azure Emperor, not to mention submitting to him. Shut up! The prince faintly spoke, but he didn't use a berating tone. Instead, he calmly continued, the Azure Emperor is a character of the Azure Emperor's generation, he must be respected. It's just that these people are trying to borrow the Azure Emperor's name, that's why they are so hateful. Oh, I got it. The young lady continued giggling. The two of them basically didn't have Qin Wentian and Zhong Yi in their eyes at all. Although Zhong Yi was extremely powerful, since he was already here, it was impossible for him to walk out of his Heavenly Thunder Imperial Palace. Not long after, more experts arrived. Most probably, those who knew the secret of the Azure Emperor were all invited here. Qin Wentian extended his perception outwards, and as expected, he discovered that this entire area had been sealed off. There was an ancient gate outside, and there were experts guarding it. At this moment, how could Qin Wentian not understand the situation he was in? However, he didn't say anything, and only stood there quietly, waiting. He wanted to see if those who knew the secret of the Azure Emperor would all have the same attitude. At this moment, an imposing man appeared. This man had a crown on his head, and when the crowd saw him, they all bowed slightly as they greeted, Your Majesty. The middle-aged man inclined his head, as his eyes instantly landed on Qin Wentian and Zhong Yi, exuding an imposing aura. Qin Wentian similarly stared at the middle-aged man, not saying a word. Kneel down. Beside the middle-aged man, two experts roared as they took a step forward. A tyrannical aura erupted forth, pressing down on Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to feel a terrifying pressure bearing down on him. If there's anyone else who acknowledges the Azure Emperor token, kneel before it and pay your respects to the Azure Emperor. Qin Wentian once again took out the Azure Emperor token. However, who would be willing to admit it? The entire public square was filled with silence, no one bothered with the Azure Emperor token. Although there were some who respected the Azure Emperor, under the current circumstances, no one dared to stand out and oppose the Emperor of Sky Thunder. Everything would have to depend on his attitude. Let me take a look at the Azure Emperor token. The Sky Thunder Emperor faintly spoke. Qin Wentian waved his hands as the Azure Emperor token landed in his hands. Such a scene caused the Sky Thunder Emperor to be stunned, as a hint of trepidation flashed in his eyes when he stared at Qin Wentian. Being able to become the Emperor of the Sky Thunder Emperor, it was obvious that he was a scheming character. Seeing that Qin Wentian wasn't flustered at all, and even dared to hand over the Azure Emperor token without hesitation, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Where did this token come from? We still need to investigate. Not to mention, your identity is still unknown. Why don't you stay here for a few days? The Sky Thunder Emperor calmly spoke, his eyes fixed on Qin Wentian, as though he wanted to see through him, to see through Qin Wentian. With the Azure Emperor token here, I order all of you to kneel before me within 10 breaths of time. Qin Wentian stared straight at the middle-aged man with his hands clasped behind his back. His voice was filled with arrogance, causing the countenances of the spectators to stiffen, not knowing where this person got his confidence from. That flirtatious young lady giggled, as though she had just heard the funniest joke in the world. Sir, are you joking with me? The wariness in the Sky Thunder Emperor's heart increased several notches when he heard Qin Wentian's words. I'm not joking, there's still 7 breaths of time. Qin Wentian coldly spoke. The spectators all laughed coldly, while the prince and the flirtatious young lady had unbridled smiles on their faces. However, just when they thought that Qin Wentian was a fool, a putong sound abruptly rang out as someone actually knelt on one knee. I'm willing to obey the will of the Azure Emperor. Your subordinate pays his respects to the young lord. Royal uncle, you. The countenance of the prince abruptly changed as he stared at that person. Pu, following which, 6 to 7 people successively knelt on one knee as they spoke in a clear voice, your subordinate pays his respects to the young lord. This scene caused the prince and the young lady beside him to be dumbfounded, as expressions of disbelief appeared on their faces. Chapter 439. The scene in front of them was completely out of everyone's expectations, causing their hearts to be thrown into chaos. Even the countenance of the Sky Thunder country's ruler changed as he glanced at the people kneeling on the ground. A terrifying coldness gleamed in his eyes. Now that he thought about it, it was indeed logical for these people to betray him. In the Sky Thunder Empire, he was the emperor. Back then, his faction was the strongest, suppressing all the other factions. Usually, he was high up in the clouds, these people naturally didn't dare to cause trouble and would only respectfully serve him. However, at this moment, there was actually someone with the Azure Emperor token who appeared here. To these people, this was undoubtedly an opportunity to turn things around. Especially when they had already offended the person with the Azure Emperor token earlier. These people who submitted were all gambling. They were gambling on the arrogance of the successor of the Azure Emperor. As long as they made the right bet, even if the Sky Thunder Empire submitted to the successor of the Azure Emperor, it wouldn't matter. Because the Sky Thunder Empire would be under their control. The Sky Thunder Emperor could tell with a single glance that these people who were kneeling on the ground belonged to 2 major factions that had a very close relationship with each other. Their combined strength wasn't much weaker compared to the Sky Thunder Emperor's faction. If they added the trump card of the successor of the Azure Emperor into the equation, their strength would definitely be sufficient to deal with the Sky Thunder Emperor. Most probably, these people had been discussing in secret before they decided to betray the Sky Thunder Emperor. Since the Sky Thunder Emperor could tell, how could Qin Wentian not know what these people were thinking? The him now was no longer as naive as he was back then. It was just that no matter what methods these people had, in front of absolute power, they were all useless. 3 breaths have passed. Qin Wendian calmly spoke. The eyes of the people in the surroundings flickered as their minds spun rapidly, struggling in their hearts. At this moment, they were faced with an extremely difficult choice. This was no longer a choice of whether or not to submit to the successor of the Azure Emperor. If it was just a choice, it would be too easy for them. Right now, it was a choice of faction, a choice of faction. In the final 3 breaths, another 3 people knelt down, choosing their faction. The others still stood there, indicating that from the start, they were all unswervingly standing on the side of the Sky Thunder Emperor. All of you are very good. The Sky Thunder Emperor's voice was laced with killing intent, while the prince as well as the beautiful maiden beside him couldn't even smile anymore. Who would have thought that because of the appearance of the successor of the Azure Emperor, the internal conflict within the Sky Thunder country would be ignited? Time's up. Qin Wendian's voice was filled with coldness. Not only had these people forgotten that they were part of the Azure faction, they even planned to kill him and seize the Azure Emperor token, cutting off all paths of escape. I'll return the Azure Emperor token to you. The Sky Thunder Emperor tossed out the Azure Emperor token, yet Qin Wendian didn't bother to catch it. He stomped on the ground as astral light erupted forth, disappearing from sight in an instant. At the instant he vanished, a bolt of lightning directly slammed into the location he was at earlier. How ferocious was this true lightning? That bolt of lightning actually exploded forth with a fiery glow. If it had struck, it would have been sufficient to annihilate Qin Wendian on the spot. As for the Azure Emperor token, it had already been destroyed by the lightning. But to the current Qin Wendian, the Azure Emperor token was no longer that important. Everything that needed to be done has already been done. The unification of the Azure faction was also nearing completion. The Sky Thunder Emperor suddenly acted, evidently intending to kill the successor of the Azure Emperor first before dealing with the traitors. But he didn't expect Qin Wendian's reaction to be so swift and violent. Inclining his head, he stared at Qin Wendian in the air as a cold light flickered in his eyes. It was as though there was a bolt of lightning blasting into Qin Wendian's sea of consciousness. However, he only saw Qin Wendian's body rising higher and higher as Zhong Yi appeared behind him, floating in the air together with him. That earlier, was that stellar transposition? A look of contemplation appeared on the Sky Thunder Emperor's face. As for Zhong Yi, he didn't feel anything strange at all. Qin Wendian had once asked Fairy Qingmei to bring the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia to the Zhong clan. Di Tian was the representative of Qin Wendian, and there was no distinction between them. Naturally, it was possible that he had cultivated the 9 ultimate arts. There's no longer a need for traitors to exist. Qin Wendian's silhouette was ice-cold. Above the air, above the clouds, an aura gradually drifted downwards. Everyone inclined their heads, only to see numerous silhouettes descending from the skies. There weren't many of them, but their auras were all extremely powerful. Each and every one of them could be at least at the upper 3 levels of Heavenly Dipper, equivalent to the strongest cultivators in their Sky Thunder country. The countenances of the Sky Thunder Emperor and the others all changed. As expected, the successor of the Azure Emperor had already subdued so many powerful existences. If the Sky Thunder Empire was united as one, they might have been able to contend against this power. But now that the internal strife had arisen, the Sky Thunder Emperor knew that there was no way he could win this war against these traitors. No matter what, this is a family matter. If my faction is annihilated, do you think that with the strength of these people, you would still be able to wield power? At that time, your positions would be far inferior to now. Why don't I act as though nothing happened earlier? The Sky Thunder Emperor was as calm as ever. However, no one replied to him. These people knew that there was no turning back now. The strength brought by Qin Wendian had far surpassed their expectations. But now, there was no turning back. If not, only death would await them. The experts in the air descended, as a terrifying aura enveloped this entire space. The crowd only saw an old man clad in simple robes removing the bag on his back. After which, he slowly opened it, revealing a wooden cudgel. Upon seeing this wooden cudgel, the countenance of the Sky Thunder Emperor instantly paled. Punishment cudgel. You are the one in charge of the punishment faction. The countenance of the Sky Thunder Emperor was incomparably unsightly to behold. As a descendant of the Azure faction, he naturally understood some of the secrets of the past. The punishment faction, when the Azure Emperor was still alive, was already in charge of the punishment in the Azure Emperor Palace. They were the strongest faction in the Azure Emperor Palace and were the most loyal supporters of the Azure Emperor. Sometimes, they were even more terrifying compared to the Azure Emperor. Because, they were in charge of punishment. For those whom the Azure Emperor didn't punish, they would punish. For those whom the Azure Emperor didn't kill, they would kill. In the punishment hall of the Azure Emperor Palace, their authority was second only to the Azure Emperor. Even the direct descendants of the Azure Emperor, the descendants of the D clan, feared them to some extent. Right now, the various factions of the Azure Emperor are reorganized, and I'm in charge of the punishment hall. Today, you all have rebelled against the Azure Emperor, and even dared to shatter the Azure Emperor token. Your crimes are too heinous, and I shall kill all of you without mercy. However, in consideration of the passing of time, I don't wish to implicate others. But if you dare to implicate others in this matter, my punishment cudgel will definitely annihilate your entire clan. The penalty old man's voice was low, containing a terrifying pressure within. He stared at the Sky Thunder Emperor and the others as he spoke. Traitors, take your own lives. If not, if a war breaks out, the Sky Thunder aristocrat clan will definitely be implicated. At that time, even more people will be killed. I wonder if the penalty old man of this generation still has the prestige of the past. The Sky Thunder Emperor slowly spoke. His body floated in the air, facing off against the penalty old man. Lightning crackled around him, and terrifying pythons of lightning appeared around him, exuding a terrifying might. Although there's only one person left from the punishment faction, he is still the penalty master. The penalty old man faintly spoke. He gripped his punishment cudgel tightly in his hands as he stepped out. With a simple step, the penalty cudgel appeared in his hands, and slashed out. There seemed to be no power behind it at all, as though it was just an ordinary cudgel piercing forward. However, the countenance of the Sky Thunder Emperor was extremely heavy. He didn't dare to be careless. He rushed out as countless pythons of lightning gushed forth, wanting to shatter this entire space. The penalty old man was instantly enveloped by the surging might of lightning. His long hair and beard fluttered in the wind, and that ordinary-looking old man actually exuded an imposing aura of anger. Around him, a layer of light flashed, enveloping him within. With a strike of the penalty cudgel, a boundless vortex of darkness appeared, akin to a hole in the depths of hell. The darkness directly penetrated through everything, and an instant later, a scream of misery rang out. The chest of the Sky Thunder Emperor directly exploded as fresh blood flowed freely. The lightning around him dissipated, and his body directly fell from the air, slamming onto the ground. Coughing out a few mouthfuls of blood, a hole actually appeared on the body of the Sky Thunder Emperor. He stared at the sky as he roared, "Good," as expected of the penalty old man. Under celestial phenomenon, there's no one who can be a match for you. I plead guilty and shall be executed. After speaking, a look of sorrow flashed in his eyes. An emperor of a generation actually had to commit suicide here. However, he was also very clear that he had no more hope of survival. Only by dying would he be able to protect his bloodline. If not, given the ironclad rule of the penalty old man, he would definitely not spare him so easily. Back then, someone from the Azure Emperor Palace had violated the rules of the punishment hall. Even when the Azure Emperor begged for mercy, it was useless. This was their duty, their belief. The penalty old man slammed his palm onto his head as the might of lightning towered up into the sky. With a thunderous boom, the emperor of a generation committed suicide on the spot. Those from the Sky Thunder Emperor's faction all had ashen expressions. That prince and the charming young woman beside him could no longer laugh. Their pale countenances were filled with an incomparably intense fear. "Your Highness, I don't want to die." That charming young woman stared at the prince. However, at this moment, how could the prince be in the mood to care about her? When the penalty old man turned his gaze over, the threat of death enveloped everyone. "Your Highness, since we have to die, let's do so if we can protect our clan members. As for you guys, don't be too ruthless. After all, His Majesty and you all share the same bloodline." Beside the prince, an old man stared at those kneeling on the ground as he resolutely spoke. After which, his palm directly slammed onto the head of the charming young woman, killing her on the spot. After which, he also committed suicide. If they made the wrong choice, it would be a path of death. The eyes of everyone were filled with sorrow, yet they knew that they would die for sure. Although they had an intense desire to live, when they saw the eyes of the penalty old man, they knew that there was no way out. They could only choose to commit suicide one by one. In the end, the prince also collapsed. Numerous corpses lay on the ground. Qin Wendian stared at these corpses. His countenance was as cold as ever, he didn't have much sympathy for them. The hymn now had also hardened his heart. A general success was built on the bones of 10,000 people. On the path to supremacy, there would surely be a mountain of corpses. Chapter 440. Qin Wendian and his group stayed in the Sky Thunder country for a total of 7 days, reorganizing the Sky Thunder royal clan and firmly grasping the royal authority in his hands. He didn't do what the Ice Spirit sect and the Zone clan did, directly requesting them to head to the Celestial Lake Palace. Instead, he chose over 10 experts from the Sky Thunder country to follow him. As for the others, they were still stationed in the Sky Thunder country, controlling the royal authority. The Sky Thunder aristocrat clan had been in control of the Sky Thunder country for over 800 years. Their roots were extremely deep, and their influence was immense. Although the person in control was someone from the Sky Thunder aristocrat clan, there were still many other experts in the Sky Thunder country, as well as incomparably vast amounts of resources and wealth. How could they give up on all of these? Hence, Qin Wendian only brought along the strongest batch of experts. At the same time, he left behind a few core members of the Sky Thunder aristocrat clan to guard the Sky Thunder country. The Sky Thunder country could become their reinforcements. Just this one time alone, the amount of resources Qin Wendian brought away from the Sky Thunder country was extremely vast. Currently, the powers under Qin Wendian's control were White Deer Institute, Zone Clan, Ice Spirit Sect, Sky Thunder country, and the Punishment Old Man. However, this wasn't the end yet. Qin Wendian personally invited Fairy Qingmei to lead her subordinates to the final power, the D clan, to reorganize themselves. The D clan, after the war back then, was almost completely annihilated. Only a few people managed to escape. The Azure Emperor had given them the last command, which was to wield the Azure Emperor token and select a successor to revive the Azure Emperor Palace. However, even the Azure Emperor himself wouldn't have imagined that a few thousand years later, those few who survived back then would actually rise up again, becoming a powerful power. After which, they split into 2 factions. One of them was Dai's faction, adhering to the Azure Emperor's will and selecting a successor. The other faction was the D Feng faction. They wanted to establish themselves as the emperor, believing that since they had the bloodline of the D clan, why didn't they control the hidden faction themselves? However, the existence of the hidden faction was only marked on the map. After many years of investigation, they only managed to find the White Deer Institute. Fairy Qingmei and the experts from the hidden faction secretly descended, using iron-blooded methods to suppress one of the hidden faction. Even if they were descendants of the D clan, they didn't show any mercy when it was time to kill them. As for the person in charge of punishment, it was naturally the punishment elder. What status did Fairy Qingmei have? Who didn't know about her relationship with the Azure Emperor back then? In just 3 days, the D clan was completely reorganized. This matter didn't cause too much of a commotion in the Grand Xia Empire. Nobody paid attention to what was happening here. Right now, even more gazes were focused on the Ginkgo continent of Grand Xia. The storm that was brewing there had the potential to topple the future of Grand Xia. The clash between Hua Taishu and Bai Qing was no small matter. How many years has it been since so many transcendent powers participated in the same storm? Not only that, this storm could transform into a terrifying tempest at any moment. While the hidden faction of the Azure Emperor was reorganizing their forces in the Celestial Lake Palace, the Heavenly Fate Rankings battle in Ginkgo drew nearer and nearer. The various transcendent powers were all accumulating their strength. During these days, the Mystic Moon Sect, Ouyang Aristocrat Clan and Jiang Clan had mobilized their experts to Ginkgo. There was no other reason than that a war could erupt between them and the Qin Clan and Hua Clan. Naturally, they had to be fully prepared. After all, Ginkgo was the territory of the Qin Clan. At the same time, the younger generations of the various transcendent powers clashed unceasingly. In fact, there would often be bloodshed. On this day, a young man by the name of Di Tian stepped into Ginkgo City alone. After 3 years, Qin Wentian once again stepped into Ginkgo. Back then, he came with the Ouyang Aristocrat Clan. But now, he was alone, arriving at this ancient city, the former capital of Grand Xia. Outside the ancient capital, there were still many visitors, wanting to take a look at the splendor of the ancient capital. Qin Wentian stood there, staring at the ancient capital he had once entered, as he sighed in his heart. 3 years. 3 years ago, he was in high spirits, determined to take control of the White Deer Institute and contend for the top 3 positions in the Heavenly Fate Rankings. At the same time, in order to prevent Luo He from interfering in the matters between him and Qingcheng, he had to defeat Zhang Chen. On the Heavenly Fate Rankings, he was in high spirits, defeating all the heroes of Grand Xia and obtaining the top position. However, what awaited him was a vicious battle. The spirit of the Purgatory Vermilion Bird transformed into a formation spirit for him, activating the ancient Vermilion Bird formation. However, the nightmare was yet to come. The Pill Emperor Hall was recruiting a son-in-law for Qingcheng, and at the same time, they actually used Qingcheng's life as a sacrifice. Even now, Qingcheng's fate was still unknown. And as for him, he transformed into a primordial great rock, wielding a demon's sword and splitting apart the Pill Emperor Hall. Thinking back, it all felt like a dream. In the blink of an eye, he had already subdued the hidden Azure faction, and with Fairy Qingmei's assistance, he could be said to have as many experts as the clouds around him. And as for his other body, the Great Rock, after sending him to Ginkgo, he returned to the demon region, continuing his reign as king, reorganizing the demonic beasts in the demon region, preparing to launch a war that would stun the entire Grand Xia. As for him, he once again arrived at Ginkgo, outside the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. And at this moment, within the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, a terrifying aura permeated the air, unceasingly extending outwards. The Purgatory Ancient Formation is activated, leave quickly. Everyone hurriedly dodged. The aura of the formation was extremely fast, and not long after, it enveloped Qin Wentian, who hadn't moved at all. The Purgatory constellation in the air cascaded downwards. Yeah. A melodious yet familiar voice drifted over. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with sharpness as he saw a white silhouette sprinting over with great speed, leaping into Qin Wentian's embrace. Good fellow. Qin Wentian sighed in his heart. To think that even after changing his appearance, little rascal would still be able to recognize him. Bzzz. A gust of hot wind buffeted his body. Qin Wentian stared ahead, only to see an indistinct Purgatory Vermilion Bird flying over, circling around Qin Wentian, emitting low cries as it rubbed its head against Qin Wentian's chest. Purgatory. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. Didn't the Purgatory Vermilion Bird transform into a formation spirit? This illusory figure should be the Purgatory Ancient Luck that had been extremely close to him in the past. Little rascal. A melodious voice drifted over. Qin Wentian inclined his head, only to see a graceful figure clad in fiery red robes sprinting over. Her exquisite figure was incomparably beautiful when contrasted with the fiery red robes. That charming face of hers caused the hearts of those who looked at her to palpitate with eagerness. When Luo Huan saw Little Rascal and the illusory vermilion bird rubbing against an unfamiliar young man, her eyes flashed with a strange light as she probed, "Are you junior brother Qin?" Based on Luo Huan's understanding of Little Rascal, it would never be so intimate with a stranger. Given its lustful nature, other than Qin Wentian, it wouldn't even dare to touch any other man. Qin Wentian stared at Luo Huan as a warm smile flickered in his eyes. Senior sister Luo Huan had always been intelligent, it was impossible for him to hide anything from her. But of course, he also had absolute trust in this senior sister of his. "Sister." Qin Wentian called out in a melodious voice. After which, the lines on his face squirmed as he reverted to his original appearance, causing a strange light to flash in Luo Huan's eyes. After which, she crossed her arms in front of her chest and propped up her chin with one hand as she smiled at Qin Wentian. "You still remember to look for your senior sister." Qin Wentian walked up, gazing at that beautiful silhouette as he gave Luo Huan a hug. "Sis, how have you and Master been these 2 years? I was bored to death. Luckily I had Little Rascal to accompany me, so I could cultivate in peace. As for you, why did you come back so quickly? Even if you know how to disguise yourself, you still have to be careful of those transcendent powers in Ginkgo. After knowing that we've all left, they no longer have the time to care about the formation." Qin Wentian and Luo Huan continued on their way and saw their master, Mustang. Qin Wentian had a smile on his face. Mustang was extremely emotional when he saw Qin Wentian. "Wentian, seeing that you are well, I can rest assured." "Teacher." Warmth flowed in Qin Wentian's heart. After which, Mustang pulled him over and spoke, "Come, sit down. Tell teacher about the changes in the outside world these 2 years. Have those transcendent powers been trying to hunt you down? It's a long story." Qin Wentian sat down as he sighed in his heart. After which, he told his master and Mustang everything that happened in the past 2 years. He didn't even hide the matter regarding the Azure Emperor Palace, causing Luo Huan and Mustang to be in a state of shock. After they finished listening, the smiles on their faces were long gone. Instead, their expressions were filled with sadness. "Qingcheng is a good girl. I hope that she's still well." Mustang's eyes were slightly wet. Back then in the Emperor's Star Academy, Old Gu was Qingcheng's grandfather, and he was Old Gu's disciple. Mustang still had some feelings for the #1 beauty of Chu. Especially after Qingcheng and Qin Wentian fell in love. Who would have thought that things would end up like this? "Let's hope so." Qin Wentian murmured. "Wentian, during these 2 years, we've prepared a huge surprise for you." At this moment, Luo Huan giggled, as though she was intentionally changing the topic to prevent Qin Wentian from feeling sad. Qin Wentian naturally understood Luo Huan's thoughts. He smiled and asked, "What surprise?" "Little Rascal." Luo Huan turned her gaze onto Little Rascal. After which, Little Rascal let out a series of squeaking sounds as it leapt out from Qin Wentian's embrace. Turning its head back, it stared at Qin Wentian as a complacent expression appeared on its face. Tilting its head upwards, it opened its tiny mouth and sucked in abruptly. In the blink of an eye, the astral light from the constellation flowed into Little Rascal's mouth, transforming into resplendent lines. Very swiftly, the astral light from the constellation dimmed as it was swallowed into Little Rascal's stomach. Not only that, the Purgatory Formation spirit in the air also transformed into a beam of light as it flew into Little Rascal's mouth. Gradually, Little Rascal's body underwent a transformation. It grew larger as a pair of Purgatory vermilion bird wings appeared on its back. A golden armor appeared on its forehead as the vermilion bird's spirit fused together with it, frenziedly devouring the constellation in the air, wanting to devour the entire sky into its mouth. This. Qin Wentian was incomparably shocked when he saw this scene. He had always felt that Little Rascal was extraordinary. Back then, it refused to leave this place with him. Could it be because of this reason? Little Rascal could devour constellations? Chapter 441. Enough, enough. If you continue to swallow it, the formation will be gone. Luo Huan interrupted Little Rascal. Only then did Little Rascal stop. Shifting its gaze, Little Rascal swaggered over to Qin Wentian as it squeaked noisily, as though it was showing off in front of Qin Wentian. Under the bewildered gaze of Qin Wentian, Little Rascal's eyes would occasionally turn exceptionally gentle, as a fiery flame burned in its eyes. Spreading its wings, it would rub its head against him. Little Rascal, have you fused with purgatory? Qin Wentian exclaimed. Little Rascal's eyes regained their clarity as it nodded its head unceasingly, causing Qin Wentian to smile bitterly. He really had no idea what demonic beast Little Rascal was. Now that you're already at this cultivation realm, your strength should be pretty strong, right? How come you still can't even speak and can't transform? Qin Wentian sighed. At the start, he didn't pay much attention to Little Rascal. But when it swallowed the constellation, the aura it exuded was clearly that of a heavenly dipper sovereign. Unknowingly, Little Rascal, who loved to stick to him and lay in the embrace of beauties, had already become so powerful. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, Little Rascal instantly pulled a long face, as though it was unhappy. It squeaked noisily again, as though it wanted to say something but couldn't speak clearly. Looking at Little Rascal's expression, a strange thought suddenly appeared in Qin Wentian's mind. Could it be that Little Rascal was already at the Heavenly Dipper realm? If that was the case, what cultivation realm would it be at when it matured? Come, grow up quickly. Qin Wentian sliced his palm, causing a line of blood to appear. He then asked, "You followed me the first time you met me. Was it because my bloodline's aura attracted you?" Qin Wentian had fed his blood to Little Rascal more than once or twice. He also knew that he had a powerful demonic bloodline, which was why he asked this question. Little Rascal nodded its head heavily. Evidently, Qin Wentian's conjecture was correct. If not, why would this lecherous little fellow cling onto a man like him? Even if Qin Wentian wanted to hug it a few more times, he wouldn't be able to do so. A terrifying aura gushed forth from Qin Wentian's droplets of blood. It was as though his blood was boiling. Now that the power of his bloodline had already been activated, it contained an even more terrifying might. Little Rascal seemed to be able to sense it. It opened its mouth and allowed Qin Wentian's blood to drip into its mouth. The first time it did so, it was still very resistant. But after knowing that Qin Wentian wouldn't be affected even if he lost a few droplets of blood, it gradually accepted this method of growth. Not too long later, Little Rascal seemed to have eaten his fill. He waddled into Luo Huan's embrace and fell asleep, causing Qin Wentian to roll his eyes. This Little Rascal truly knew how to enjoy life. Sis, when did Little Rascal become capable of devouring constellations? Qin Wentian curiously asked. Before you left, it was already capable of devouring constellations bit by bit. You don't know this, but after you all left, it almost devoured the entire formation cleanly before it spat it out again. Luo Huan recalled the time when she saw the transformation of Little Rascal. So powerful? Qin Wentian exclaimed in shock. Not only that, it can also strengthen itself by devouring constellations. This was how it broke through to the Heavenly Dipper realm. If it wasn't for the fact that it was afraid that we would lose the protection of the formation, I suspect that it would have devoured the entire formation cleanly instead of spitting it out again. Luo Huan gently rubbed Little Rascal's body, as though she was doting on it. During this period of time, the relationship between her and Little Rascal had become extremely deep. Not only that, it even has an innate ability. Mustang, who was at the side, also laughed. Momentarily, Qin Wentian's eyes brightened. He naturally knew that some powerful demonic beasts would have innate abilities that belonged solely to them. After not seeing it for over a year, Little Rascal actually broke through to the Heavenly Dipper realm and underwent a transformation. What innate ability? Qin Wentian curiously asked. It's not that powerful. Just wait for it to display it to you. Luo Huan giggled, as though she was intentionally whetting his appetite. The three of them sat together and chatted. It had been a long time since they were so relaxed. Little Rascal slept for a long time before it slowly opened its eyes. In an instant, it leaped from Luo Huan's embrace into Qin Wentian's embrace, jumping up and down in a lively manner. Come, show me your innate ability. Qin Wentian rubbed Little Rascal's head. Little Rascal's eyes brightened. It turned its head and glanced at Luo Huan before leaping into the air. Spreading its fiery wings, Little Rascal let out a soft cry as its body underwent a transformation. Very quickly, a terrifying purgatory vermilion bird appeared in the air. It was exactly the same as Qin Wentian's purgatory vermilion bird Ancient Luck. This scene caused Qin Wentian to stand up and stare at the skies. He only saw the gentle gaze of the purgatory vermilion bird. Clearly, this was the purgatory vermilion bird before it transformed into a formation spirit. But very quickly, the eyes of Little Rascal flickered as it transformed again. This time, it transformed into a terrifying ancient demon. This was Qin Wentian's astral soul demonic beast, the demon sovereign. Transmogrification innate ability. Qin Wentian murmured. Yes, Little Rascal's innate ability is transmogrification. However, it doesn't increase its combat prowess by much. It doesn't have the innate abilities of other demonic beasts. Although transforming into a purgatory vermilion bird allows its body to be covered in purgatory flames, it won't be able to unleash the true might of the purgatory flames. Luo Huan smiled. Although she said this, she was still extremely shocked by Little Rascal's abilities. She had never seen such a demonic beast before. Master, sister, there's no need for you two to stay here any longer. I've already sent people to fetch you. Let's head to the Celestial Lake Palace first. Qin Wentian spoke to Luo Huan and Mustang. The two of them weren't surprised by Qin Wentian's words. They already knew of Qin Wentian's secret. Qin Wentian still had the body of a great rock residing in the Celestial Lake Palace. Little Rascal, after Master and the rest leave, secretly swallow this formation and bring it away. Don't digest it, I don't want purgatory to disappear. Qin Wentian stared at the air. Little Rascal transformed into the form of a purgatory vermilion bird. The purgatory vermilion bird swooped down and landed on Qin Wentian's shoulder, causing Qin Wentian to laugh. I promise you, I won't let you disappear. A few days later, a few silhouettes accidentally entered the formation. They didn't attract any attention at all. Currently, everyone in the outside world knew that Qin Wentian, Ouyang Guangsheng, and the rest were not within the formation. Who would bother monitoring the formation? These demonic silhouettes actually transformed into demonic beasts and brought Mustang and Luo Huan away. Evidently, their true bodies were demonic beasts. Although there was no one monitoring the formation, for the sake of safety, the Great Rock had personally come, flying in the skies. After exiting the Ginkgo continent, Mustang and Luo Huan were sent into the skies and mounted on the back of the Great Rock. There, they saw the other body of Qin Wentian before they left together with the Great Rock. As for Little Rascal, it followed Qin Wentian and stayed behind in Ginkgo. That night, in Ginkgo, the formation of the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia mysteriously vanished. On the morning of the second day, this news caused quite a commotion. Those transcendent powers arrived, wanting to investigate the reason behind the disappearance of the formation. Naturally, they also wanted to see if there were any secrets left behind in Grand Xia. Other than them, many others from Ginkgo also entered the ancient kingdom. Si Qiong and the other transcendent powers had long since left, and there were no longer any experts left to guard Grand Xia. How could it not be turned upside down? However, in the ancient kingdom, there was nothing left behind, only ruins and ruins. And in this ancient kingdom, there was a person that attracted the attention of many. This person was extraordinarily handsome, and had a pair of sharp eyebrows. His entire person exuded an aura of sharpness. However, what truly attracted the attention of others wasn't his looks. In Ginkgo, there were simply too many young men with extraordinary demeanors. What made people startled was the mount he was riding. At this moment, this young man stood in the skies, and beneath his feet was a great rock. This great rock was over 100 meters in length. Its claws were as sharp as hooks, and its eyes flashed with lightning. It floated in the air, exuding the aura of a hegemon of the skies. The appearance of this great rock caused people to recall the battle at the Pill Emperor Hall. Qin Wentian had transformed into a primordial great rock, wielding a demon sword as he destroyed the Pill Emperor Hall. And now, a primordial great rock actually appeared in Ginkgo. How could it not attract the attention of others? It was rumored that the primordial great rock Qin Wentian had transformed into was a monarch of the skies, with a wingspan of 3,000 meters. But even so, the appearance of a primordial great rock in the skies right now was truly shocking. Let alone the fact that this great rock was being ridden by a young man. Who was this young man? A group of figures had sharp gazes as they stared at Qin Wentian, their eyes flashing with a cold light. These people were none other than experts from the great solar Qin clan of Ginkgo. When they saw the great rock, they naturally thought of Qin Wentian. Back then in the Moon continent, this young man not only destroyed the Pill Emperor Hall, he even killed several experts from the great solar Qin clan. Scram! A middle-aged man stared at Qin Wentian with a scorching light in his eyes. One of his sons had been killed by accident in the Pill Emperor Hall, and as he stared at the great rock, the flames of hatred instantly ignited in his heart. Qin Wentian glanced at the middle-aged man. His aura was extremely powerful and he had a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. The people beside him were all Heavenly Dipper sovereigns as well. These people were only sent here to scout the ancient kingdom. From this, one could see how deep the foundations of the great solar Qin clan were. Are you talking to me? Qin Wentian stared at the middle-aged man as he coldly laughed in his heart. Just a single glance at the blazing flames in the middle-aged man's eyes, as well as the fiery qi gushing forth from the middle-aged man's bloodline, he already knew that this middle-aged man cultivated the great solar universe art. Naturally, he was an expert from the great solar Qin clan. Seize his demonic beast. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with a cold light when he saw Qin Wentian asking him a question. Instantly, the experts from the great solar Qin clan all exuded a tyrannical aura. No matter who this middle-aged man was, to the great solar Qin clan, what difference did it make? The middle-aged man's first sentence, telling Qin Wentian to scram, meant that he already had the intention of seizing the primordial great rock. Chapter 442. The ancient Great Rock was one of the 8 demonic divinities in the legends. It was a demonic divinity that could connect with the heavens. If one transformed into a demonic divinity, their wingspan would be over 3,000 miles, and with a single flap of their wings, they could even shatter the constellations. A great rock was exceedingly rare. Back then, Qin Wentian had also displayed his tyrannical strength in the Pill Emperor Hall. And now, in the Ginkgo continent, there was actually another great rock. Not only that, it wasn't an extremely powerful one. How could it not attract the greed of others? At this moment, the middle-aged man from the great solar Qin clan was thinking in his heart. This trip to the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia was fruitless. If they could obtain a great rock, it would be a pleasant surprise. As for this young man, he would interrogate him to find out his identity. In the entire Grand Xia, there weren't many powers that their great solar Qin clan couldn't afford to antagonize. Wanting to kill me just because of a single disagreement? This is the conduct of the great solar Qin clan. Qin Wentian coldly laughed as he stared at the middle-aged man. He was still calmly standing on the back of the great rock with his hands clasped behind his back, as though he didn't care about these people at all. Who asked you to not know what's good for you? The middle-aged man waved his hands, causing the others to move forwards, surrounding Qin Wentian. Ha ha ha. Right at this moment, a burst of hearty laughter could be heard, as expected of the great solar Qin clan, as arrogant as ever, not knowing what's good for you. So what if I kill you? If there comes a day when your great solar Qin clan falls, you would be like a rat on the street, hated by everyone. You guys better pray that your Qin clan can remain strong forever. As the sound of his voice faded, a group of silhouettes appeared not far away. The person in the lead was clad in violet robes that seemed to contain a hint of violet lightning, exuding a sense of arrogance. This person was extremely young, roughly 26 to 27 years old. His cultivation base was already at the peak of the second level of Heavenly Dipper. Beside him, there were several other youths. Although they were all young, their demeanors were extraordinary, causing many to involuntarily praise them. These people were none other than those who had participated in the Heavenly Fate rankings last year. That violet-robed young man was none other than Ouyang Guangsheng from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, while the others around him were all good friends of Ouyang Guangsheng. As for the white-robed fatty with a shameless smile on his face, he was none other than Fan Lo, and the tall and sturdy young man was none other than Chu Mang. Ouyang Guangsheng. The middle-aged man from the Chen clan turned his head back as a fiery light flickered in his eyes. "You want to meddle in other people's business?" the middle-aged man asked coldly. "No, if you can snatch other people's demons, then after you snatch it, can I also snatch yours?" Ouyang Guangsheng laughed. There were many experts behind him, their strength far exceeded that of the great Solar Chen clan. Evidently, the Ouyang aristocrat clan didn't dare to be careless. After all, this was the territory of the great Solar Chen clan. "Ouyang Guangsheng, you seem to be in a good mood." A cold laughter drifted over. Not far away, a group of silhouettes could be seen walking over. These people exuded an aura as sharp as a divine weapon, and were none other than the experts from the Wang clan of the War Continent. Right now, the various transcendent powers had gathered in Ginkgo, and compared to 3 years ago, it was unknown how many times more powerful they were. Each transcendent power had sent a terrifying force to guard Ginkgo. This was especially so after the great battle between the 5 transcendent powers. They all felt that a storm would descend at any moment, and were all prepared for it. "I'm only here to take a look, how can I be in a good mood?" Ouyang Guangsheng swept his gaze over to those from the Wang clan. Recently, the Wang clan and Great Solar Chen clan had gotten closer and closer. It seemed like there was a high possibility that they would join forces. This wasn't a good omen at all. The Great Solar Chen clan and Hua clan were originally allies because of the great battle between them. Against the transcendent powers of the Great Solar Chen clan, they would always stand on the same side. And if the Wang clan of the War Continent was added into the mix, their combined strength would be too terrifying. The Chen clan, Wang clan and Hua clan were all part of the 9 grand clans of Grand Xia. Up until now, they were still ranked within the top 9 among the transcendent powers. As for the Ouyang aristocrat clan, Jiang clan and Mystic Moon sect, they obviously couldn't be compared to these 3. It's just a demonic beast, it's fine if the Chen clan wants it. Yet your Ouyang aristocrat clan wants to interfere? If this isn't in a good mood, then what is? Those from the Wang clan mocked. They naturally didn't have a good impression of Ouyang Guangsheng. The Wang clan and Qin Wentian had always had a grudge between them. In the Sword Reverence City, the Wang clan's group that went to the Sword Reverence Cliff was completely annihilated. Even the chosen Wang Ju had died under Qin Wentian's demon sword. In the Pill Emperor Hall, the Wang clan once again suffered heavy casualties. With regards to Qin Wentian, the Wang clan hated him to the bone. Luckily, Qin Wentian hadn't appeared for a very long time, and it was highly probable that he had already died. However, Ouyang Guangsheng and the others were all good friends of Qin Wentian, and were secretly targeting the transcendent powers that stood against Qin Wentian back then. It seemed that because of Qin Wentian, the transcendent powers of Grand Xia were divided into 2 factions. Just a demonic beast. Qin Wentian laughed. The words of these people from the Wang clan were so light. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's cold laughter, the experts from the Wang clan turned their gazes onto Qin Wentian as cold laughter flickered in their eyes. "Could it be that you think I've spoken wrongly? I'm laughing at the Wang clan for boasting shamelessly, seeking their own humiliation." Qin Wentian quietly stood with his hands clasped behind his back, standing on the back of the great rock. His words caused the eyes of those from the Wang clan to flash with coldness as killing intent gushed forth from them. It was one thing if Ouyang Guangxing dared to provoke the Wang clan, but a mere heavenly dipper sovereign actually dared to be so audacious? Now, who doesn't know what happened back then in the Sword Reverence City and the Pill Emperor Hall? It was a demonic beast that transformed into a great rock, slaughtering the members of the Wang clan. The transcendent powers of Grand Xia, the Wang clan, didn't even have the courage to face that great rock head-on. Now that the scars have healed, they have forgotten the pain. It was as though Qin Wentian didn't feel the coldness of the other party as he spoke. How could the people in the surroundings not understand? The person Qin Wentian was referring to was naturally Qin Wentian, who had transformed into a primordial demonic beast. Do you think you can compare yourself to Qin Wentian just because you obtained a primordial demonic great rock? Do you know how the word death is written? One of the experts from the Wang clan didn't even bother to mask the threat in his voice. I don't want to compare myself to the top ranker of the Pill Emperor Hall. But at the very least, have never placed people like you in my eyes. Qin Wentian laughed. Back then, I heard that Qin Wentian's name shook the entire Grand Xia. Even when facing the attacks of the various transcendent powers, he didn't destroy this place. Who would have thought that today, Qin Wentian, would meet with such a calamity? As the sound of his voice faded, the great rock beneath him soared up, landing on a gigantic pillar as it stared down at those from the Qin clan and Wang clan. Have a cultivation base at the second level of Heavenly Dipper. If the Qin and Wang clans still have a shred of arrogance left in them, they can choose anyone at the same level as me to kill me. If I die, it means that I am useless. You guys can bring this primordial great rock away. But of course, if you guys are used to ganging up on me, don't mind. Qin Wentian didn't even wait for his opponents to act. His voice rang out in all directions, causing the countenances of those from the Qin and Wang clan to turn incredibly unsightly. This person's schemes were truly deep. He actually took the initiative to speak out. In that case, if they directly ganged up on Qin Wentian and killed him, it would mean that the Qin and Wang clan had no other experts left. I, Ouyang, would also like to see for myself how strong the experts from the Qin and Wang clan are. Given how unexcelled they are in this world, I'm sure it would be easy for them to suppress those at the same level as them. Ouyang Guangxing spoke in a carefree tone. His silhouettes flickered as they descended into the air, waiting to watch a good show. Those from the Qin and Wang clan exchanged glances. After which, the middle-aged man from the Qin clan laughed. Since my Qin clan regards this great rock so highly, Qin Yuan, go ahead. Evidently, the Qin clan didn't wish for the great rock to land in the hands of others. Qin Yuan was over 50 years of age this year, yet he looked like someone in his 30s. His spirit was hale and hearty, and his cultivation base was at the second level of Heavenly Dipper. He had been at this level for many years, and his foundation was extremely stable. As a core descendant of the Great Solar Qin clan, he cultivated the Great Solar Universe art, and his combat prowess was extremely high. Although they didn't know who Qin Wentian was, based on Qin Yuan's tyrannical combat prowess, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill Qin Wentian. Qin Yuan stepped out, and abruptly, a surge of scorching heat gushed forth as an astral nova manifested. This astral nova was in the form of a crimson humanoid figure, and the temperature of its body was incomparably terrifying. Go! With a wave of his hand, the astral nova whistled through the air, shooting towards Qin Wentian. Instantly, a terrifying heat permeated the air, as though a scorching heat was being absorbed into Qin Wentian's body. With a flick of the finger of the astral nova, the shadow of the astral nova shot towards Qin Wentian. Bzzz. The raging flames engulfed Qin Wentian, burning him up. However, the spectators only saw that Qin Wentian was still floating in the air, not moving an inch at all, ignoring the scorching heat of the flames. Stepping out, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he directly appeared in front of Qin Yuan's astral nova. Without hesitation, he blasted out with his palms. Qin Yuan coldly laughed. His astral nova had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times, and was incomparably sturdy, comparable to a divine weapon. It was forged from the great solar cosmos fire, and its temperature was exceedingly high. How could it possibly withstand Qin Wentian's fleshly body? Chen Yuan waved his palms as his astral nova smashed downwards. The entire astral nova seemed to have transformed into a boundless amount of cosmos fire, as terrifying lava flowed within, wanting to land on Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian's palms slammed out, directly imprinting onto the astral nova. An instant later, the astral nova was shattered into pieces. Chen Yuan's astral nova was destroyed, and his body suffered severe injuries as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. However, at this moment, he explosively retreated. Only to see Qin Wendian slowly walking over, his steps incomparably elegant, akin to a great rock. With a smile on his face, he blasted out a palm strike. Chen Yuan congregated all of his strength as flames gushed forth from his body, attempting to defend against this attack. However, at the instant the two of them collided, Chen Yuan only felt the boundless might contained within his opponent's palm strike. Boom! The sound of a bell chime rang out directly in his heart. He stared at the smile in Qin Wendian's eyes as an expression of terror appeared on his face. But an instant later, his meridians were shattered, and his gaze instantly turned dull. Qin Wendian didn't hesitate to snatch away his interspatial ring. His silhouette flickered as he returned to the back of the great rock, smiling at those from the Qin clan. This interspatial ring can be considered as the spoils of war. I will not accept anything else from you. If the Qin clan or Wang clan wishes to continue teaching me, I won't decline. Qin Wendian laughed as he stared at them. His actions caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Chen Yuan's strength wasn't weak, yet he was killed so easily. From this, one could see how powerful this person was. Chapter 443. Those from the Chen and Wang clan also stared at Qin Wendian, their countenances gleaming with sharpness. With such combat prowess, how could he be a nobody? Which sect are you from? An expert from the Qin clan coldly asked. My master is someone from the wilderness, and in addition to my stubbornness, I didn't manage to obtain even a 10,000th of my master's true inheritance. Hence, I don't dare to use my name to show off. At this moment, Qin Wendian was still standing there with his hands clasped behind his back. But because he had defeated Chen Yuan, the spectators couldn't help but feel that he was extraordinary. The Grand Xia Empire was boundlessly vast, with experts as common as the clouds. Other than the various transcendent powers, there were also some hidden cultivators with tyrannical strength. In fact, there were even some who were ranked on the Heavenly Dipper rankings who had left Grand Xia, but there were still some who chose to remain in Grand Xia. In addition to the history of Grand Xia, who knew how many hidden experts there were? It wasn't strange for Qin Wendian to say that he was a disciple of a hidden cultivator. For example, Mu Feng, he was the disciple of the Poison Monarch. Although the Poison Monarch wasn't from a transcendent power, who would dare to look down on him? His disciples were all experts in the use of poison, even the transcendent powers wouldn't be able to recruit them. Is that so? Since this is the case, I really want to see who your master is exactly. That expert from the Chen clan waved his hands as a group of experts stepped out, pressing down on Qin Wendian. These people stood arrogantly in the air, surrounding Qin Wendian as a tyrannical aura gushed forth, boring down on Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian, exuding a terrifying might. Although there were many hidden cultivators in the Grand Xia Empire, for those who were extremely famous, they would definitely have a unique innate technique or cultivation art. Just like Mu Feng's poison, they could easily recognize it. As long as they forced Qin Wendian to use his secret technique, they would be able to tell who his master was. Of course, the Qin clan had used such an excuse to encircle and annihilate Qin Wendian because they knew that they wouldn't be able to look Qin Wendian in the eye if they fought him alone, and they were afraid of losing face, so they'd intentionally found an excuse to attack together. Qin Wendian stood on the great rock, staring at the people in the void. There are 5 Heavenly Dipper realm second-layer powerhouses came at the same time, and for a time, the pressure swept over. Boom! A terrifying gravitational force bore down on his body, as though he was carrying the weight of an ancient mountain on his shoulders. Only to see a figure stepping out, with a wave of his hand, an ancient mountain appeared in his palm. This ancient mountain was actually an astral nova. Another person's eyes became extremely deep. In his eyes, there seemed to be wisps of the netherworld fire burning Qin Wentian's eyes. Another person stepped forward, causing the air to tremble as a willpower that seemed capable of destroying everything exploded out, so intense that Qin Wentian couldn't even breathe. 5 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns walked towards Qin Wentian at the same time. One could very well imagine how strong the pressure was. Qin Wentian didn't mind it at all. He stood there proudly, staring at the 5 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns in the air, his countenance as calm as ever. Boom! A towering flame palm imprint slammed downwards, blasting towards Qin Wentian. At the same time, the gravitational force grew even stronger as the ancient mountain peak in the air descended, aiming for Qin Wentian's head. If it were to land on him, Qin Wentian would definitely be annihilated. The 5 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns all unleashed their innate techniques. Fire dragons danced in the air, palm imprints blotted out the sky, ancient mountain peak suppressing everything. For a moment, Qin Wentian was in the middle of a chaotic torrent of attacks, as though he could be destroyed at any moment. Qin Wentian inclined his head, his smile still on his face. He leisurely stepped out, ignoring the chaotic attacks as he soared up into the air. Clenching his fists tightly, Qin Wentian's fists were filled with blazing flames, as though the power of his bloodline was gushing forth. The power of his bloodline seemed to be on the verge of igniting, causing Qin Wentian's body to be enveloped by a terrifying halo of light, causing him to appear exceptionally demonic. As the palm imprint and ancient mountain peak descended, Qin Wentian blasted out with both his palms. His left palm slammed into the flame palm imprint, while his right palm directly slammed into the bottom of the ancient mountain peak. Kacha! A crisp sound rang out as cracks appeared on the surface of the ancient mountain peak. The cracks extended outwards, causing the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns to cough out blood. His countenance turned pale as he tried to retract his astral nova. Qin Wentian glanced at the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns, as though he was mocking his stupidity. Earlier, he had already destroyed the astral nova of one of the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns, yet this Heavenly Dipper sovereign still dared to use his astral nova against him? Wasn't he courting death? Bang! An explosive sound rang out as the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns of the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns were directly destroyed by a single strike. How terrifying was the power of such an attack! Right now, Qin Wentian's mandate of force and mandate of demons were already at the advanced boundary of the second level, not the initial boundary. How terrifying would the might of his astral nova be? In addition to the power of his bloodline, his attacks and defenses were amplified to perfection. In fact, when his bloodline ignition erupted forth, he could even directly jump levels. Not only that, Qin Wentian's Yuanfu contained divine energy. Although it was just an ordinary strike, the power contained within it was so tyrannical that even a third-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns might not be able to withstand it. How could his astral nova not shatter? At the instant Qin Wentian destroyed his astral nova, the other attacks all rained down on him. However, Qin Wentian merely laughed coldly. With a wave of his hands, a resplendent sword light appeared, arcing through the air, cleaving everything in its path apart. We can't use our astral novas to attack anymore. The 5 of them all had the same thought in their minds. If they used their astral novas to attack Qin Wentian, they would be directly destroyed by him. Great solar illumination art. One of them roared in rage. Momentarily, the 5 of them stood in 5 different directions, frenziedly circulating the great solar universe art. In an instant, an incomparably resplendent light radiated from the 5 of them, illuminating the entire space as all of their attacks pierced towards Qin Wentian. In an instant, the terrifying might radiating from their attacks seemed to want to incinerate Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian snorted. His palms blasted out in the direction of the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns whose astral novas were shattered by him. A terrifying golden claw manifested in the air, and with an abrupt clench, the claw directly grabbed onto a second-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. Extinguish. Qin Wendian coldly spat out. The golden claw directly slashed downwards, instantly destroying that Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. His actions caused the hearts of the other four to tremble, but at this moment, there was no longer any path of retreat. The great solar bloodline in their bodies was ignited, as all of them rushed towards Qin Wendian. It was as though a blazing sun had appeared directly on Qin Wendian, wanting to incinerate Qin Wendian into oblivion. Qin Wendian could feel the terrifying heat radiating from his body. It felt as though his entire body was on the verge of burning up. That scorching heat directly permeated into his body, destroying it bit by bit. At this moment, the power of his bloodline grew even more violent. Droplets of blood seeped into his palms, exuding a terrifying aura. Pang! 2 palm imprints simultaneously erupted forth from Qin Wendian's palms, slamming into 2 of the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns with the speed of lightning. The palm imprints were too fast, there was basically no time for them to dodge. But at the instant the 2 of them were struck by the palm imprints, they instantly let out miserable screams. After which, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the vitality of their bodies was completely corroded away as they directly fell from the air. The countenances of the other 2 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns drastically changed. They wanted to retreat, but how could Qin Wendian give up? 2 more droplets of blood seeped into his palms, as a blood-colored palm imprint instantly slammed into their backs. Just like before, the 2 of them died in an instant. As for Qin Wendian's body, the blood in his body was still boiling, as a surge of heat transformed into flames that radiated outwards from his body. This was the Great Solar Universe Art's fire attribute energy that was forced into his body, forcibly forced out by his bloodline, and was unable to destroy his body. His silhouette flickered, Qin Wendian prepared to collect his spoils of war. However, the middle-aged man from the Great Solar Clan had already rushed over. Qin Wendian coldly laughed as another droplet of blood seeped into his palms. His palms turned the color of blood as he slowly stretched them out. That middle-aged man's countenance abruptly changed as he frantically retreated, not daring to clash head-on with Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian laughed mockingly. With a wave of his hands, the interspatial rings of the 5 Heavenly Dipper sovereigns were all taken away. Qin Wendian's silhouette flickered as he returned to the back of the great rock. He casually stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, exuding an unexcelled aura. This man is so strong. The spectators stared at Qin Wendian's silhouette. He had easily killed 5 cultivators at the same level as him, and not only that, they were all experts from the Great Solar Qin clan who had cultivated the Great Solar Universe art. This man's combat prowess was on a demon level. Not only that, he hadn't even released his astral novas yet. Ouyang Guangsheng and the rest all had expressions of surprise on their faces. Those from the Wang clan all had extremely gloomy expressions on their faces. Evidently, they had judged wrongly. This man's combat prowess was extremely high, and the sect he came from was definitely extraordinary. The one whose countenance was the most unsightly was naturally the middle-aged man from the Great Solar Qin clan. His eyes gleamed as he stared at Qin Wendian. What you used earlier, was it the Blood Curse imprint? The Blood Curse imprint was one of the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia that had long been lost. Using blood as a sacrifice, one could unleash a curse imprint that would instantly corrode the flesh and blood of those who were struck by it, turning them into dried bones. Although Qin Wendian's imprint was slightly different, it was extremely similar to the Blood Curse imprint. There's no need for you to know. Qin Wendian emotionlessly replied. Sir, you killed an expert from my Great Solar Qin clan. Regardless of who your master is, my Great Solar Qin clan still has to learn a thing or two from you. The countenance of the middle-aged man from the Great Solar Qin clan was cold. As he spoke, the people beside him had already departed. Evidently, they had gone to inform the Qin clan. I've long heard of Qin Wang's fame. Ranked second in 6 consecutive years, missed the ranking battle 3 years ago. Now that I've broken through to Heavenly Dipper, I'm naturally not suitable to contend for supremacy on the Heavenly Fate rankings. Since that's the case, I can only stay here in the ancient kingdom to seek guidance from the great solar Qin clan. Qin Wentian flicked his sleeves as he soared up into the air, landing on the peak of an ancient pillar. The great rock hovered beside him as it stared down at him. Ouyang Guangsheng and the rest also landed on the pillars, causing the eyes of the spectators to gleam with sharpness. It seemed like there would be a show to watch today. This man actually dared to mock Qin Wang as the number 2 for 1,000 years. The news of what happened in the ancient kingdom soon circulated around. Many experts from the Shi clan, Thousand Ju Alliance, and Hua clan all came to the ancient kingdom. For a period of time, it was as though another gathering of experts was about to take place in the ancient kingdom. And this time around, the main character was actually a young man with the surname Di. It was said that the ultimate art he was proficient in was one of the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia, the Blood Curse imprint. Chapter 444. In the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, a storm was brewing once more as the transcendent powers all headed over. Right now in Ginkgo, the Heavenly Fate rankings were about to be announced. It was unknown how many elites had gathered here. Not only were the great solar Qin clan, Shi clan, Thousand Ju Alliance from Ginkgo, the Hua clan, Star Seizing Manor and Skyember sect from the Moon continent all arrived as well. Other than them, the other transcendent powers of the 9 continents were also present. At this moment in the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, the sound of wind whistling unceasingly could be heard as experts appeared. Who would have thought that a young man surnamed Di would cause such a commotion? But after thinking about it, they understood that the reason why these people came wasn't simply because of the young man surnamed Di. Right now, the transcendent powers of Grand Xia were already at odds with each other. There were even some who had already declared war against each other. Now, the slightest disturbance could cause a terrifying storm. It was rumored that the young man surnamed Di wasn't the only one in Grand Xia. The Ouyang aristocrat clan was also present. The grudge between them and the Qin clan was extremely obvious. There are so many experts. The Qin clan, Hua clan, and Wang clan are all here. Even the Ouyang aristocrat clan and Jiang clan are here. The Sky Demon sect, Beast King Hall and Phoenix Cry Valley from the Demon Continent are here as well. Even the 9 Mystical Palace, Green Cloud Pavilion and Misty Peak from the Qing Continent are here. The crowd swept their gazes across the various powers in the air, feeling a wave of shock in their hearts. Before this, they had never thought that so many experts would be drawn out. Although some powers did not send many people and only sent a few, it was enough to show how sensitive the situation in Grand Xia was right now. Even the slightest change could affect the entire situation. Qin Wang has arrived. At this moment, the silhouette of Qin Wang appeared in the direction of the Qin clan. He wasn't alone. Beside him, there were a few others. Among them, one of them was extremely conspicuous, exuding a terrifying aura. He looked extremely young, yet everyone knew that this young man had already been famous for many years. He was a dazzling character ranked on the Heavenly Fate rankings 3 batches ago. 3 batches, 9 years. 9 years ago, the most dazzling existence of the younger generation of the Qin clan was none other than Qin Fan. Back then, he was ranked 2nd on the Heavenly Fate rankings, and now, his cultivation base had already broken through to the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. Before Qin Wang broke through to Heavenly Dipper, he had always been a Heaven's Chosen of the great solar Qin clan. Both he and Qin Wang were strong contenders for the leadership of the great solar Qin clan. Although this person's name was Qin Fan, he was not ordinary at all. His eyes were flowing with the light of the great sun, as if it could burn people. Qin Fan, Qin Wang. Only to see that the 3rd-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign from the Qin clan had a look of respect on his face when he saw the two of them. Although he was an elder, the status of these two in the great solar Qin clan was extraordinary. They were nurtured as the future leaders of the great solar Qin clan. In the future, if one of them broke through to celestial phenomenon first, he would become one of the leaders of the great solar Qin clan. The two of them nodded slightly, but they both looked at Qin Wentian with extremely sharp expressions. Chen Fan walked out and stood in the sky, looking at the figure in front of him. Is he the one who killed my family? Chen Fan asked coldly. Yes. That expert from the Great Solar Qin clan nodded in reply. Momentarily, Chen Fan stepped forward, and very swiftly, he appeared in the airspace above Qin Wentian. It was as though he wanted to occupy a higher vantage point, staring down at Qin Wentian from above. A brilliant light flashed as an astral nova in the form of a blazing sun appeared above his head. Astral novas were the materialization of astral souls. His fourth astral soul was a blazing sun astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer. It contained an incomparably scorching temperature, and every beam of light from it contained an intense killing intent. Astral novas were incomparably terrifying. Only to see Chen Fan lifting his foot and stomping downwards. Instantly, boundless beams of light cascaded downwards, piercing into Qin Wentian's body. A stifling pressure bore down on Qin Wentian, tearing through his robes, as though they were on the verge of igniting. Qin Wentian's blood surged as a halo of light enveloped him. However, Chen Fan continued stomping downwards as countless beams of light shot into Qin Wentian's body, causing Qin Wentian's skin to feel as though it was on the verge of burning, as his entire body turned red. He inclined his head and stared at Chen Fan. This person's cultivation base was extremely tyrannical, at the fifth level of Heavenly Dipper, 3 levels higher than him. The might of his astral nova was incomparably terrifying, and in addition to the fact that this person was a demon-level genius on the same level as Chen Wang, his combat prowess was incomparable. The aura exuding from Chen Fan rose unceasingly, but at this moment, Chen Fan flicked his sleeves as he retracted his astral nova. Staring at Qin Wentian, he stated, "You can't even withstand a single strike. Killing you is beneath me." After speaking, he turned and returned to the Chen clan. It wasn't that he couldn't kill Qin Wentian, but rather, Qin Wentian had challenged the Chen clan, and the Chen king would naturally kill him. Killing someone from the Chen clan meant that Qin Wentian had no path of survival in Ginkgo. A 5th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign bullying a 2nd-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign? Chen Fan of the Great Solar Qin clan has truly experienced it. Ouyang Quangsheng mocked, his words causing Chen Fan to shift his gaze onto the members of the Ouyang aristocrat clan. These people had protected Ouyang Quangsheng very well. I won't act, Chen Wang and the rest will naturally kill this person. Could it be that you, Ouyang Quangsheng, want to come out and try? Chen Fan coldly snorted, causing Ouyang Quangsheng to flutter his violet robes as he stepped out. Sure, I'll try. Back then in the Heavenly Fate rankings, Chen Wang was only ranked 2nd for 1,000 years. Since I'm here today, I'd like to spar with him. As Ouyang Quangsheng stepped out, Chu Mang and Fan Lu also stepped out. Evidently, they didn't want Ouyang Quangsheng to fight alone. Although Chen Wang was only at the 2nd level of Heavenly Dipper, his cultivation base was extremely stable. He had already been at the peak of the 2nd level for a long period of time, making him extremely difficult to deal with. There aren't so many people from my Qin clan here today. Which of the transcendent powers are willing to act? Chen Fan swept a glance at these people. He naturally understood that although Chen Wang had the advantage in terms of strength, if he were to fight against so many people at the same time, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Not only that, he was clear that these people were all good friends of Qin Wentian. Now, their combat prowess was extremely high, especially when they worked together. A few silhouettes walked out from the crowd. They were from the direction of the War Continent's Wang clan. After which, from the direction of the Hua clan, a few others also stepped out. In an instant, the situation was reversed. But at the same time, from the direction of the Jiang clan in the Wind continent, there were also people who stepped out, standing together with Ouyang Quangsheng and the others. It's these transcendent powers again, wanting to use this opportunity to start another war. But this time around, the Wang clan, Chen clan, and Hua clan are all on the same side. In that case, the Ouyang aristocrat clan would no longer have any advantage. The hearts of the spectators mused. Indeed, that young man surnamed D was just a bait. After which, from the direction of the mystic moon hall, a person walked out. The person in the lead was clad in black. Momentarily, numerous sharp gazes landed on her. Bai Qing, the netherworld slaughter god. Many had died in her hands. She was extremely dangerous, and was the #1 target on the list of people to kill. The various transcendent powers surrounded an area, and in the air, the experts from the various transcendent powers stepped out once again. Last time, the tempest was caused by Hua Taishu. This time around, it was because of that young man surnamed D. Terrifying Qiankuan flames blazed around Chen Wang as he released his astral nova. This time around, he wanted these people to die. Let me deal with her first. Chen Wang pointed to Bai Qing as he spoke. His silhouette flickered as he descended from the sky. His palms transformed into the arms of a lava giant as he abruptly grabbed towards Bai Qing. In the air, the lava giant bore down on Bai Qing, causing the temperature of the surrounding space to rise so high that it could even vaporize people. Devil might gushed forth from Bai Qing, causing the entire sky to darken. It was as though the rays of light were no longer able to shine down. A terrifying devil saber appeared in her hands as she directly slashed out with it. Big Bro Chu Mang. Fan Le called out. Momentarily, the two of them took out their astral bows and shot out their arrows at the same instant, akin to true lightning bolts as they shot towards Chen Wang. However, the experts from the Hua clan and Wang clan directly rushed over. Ouyang Guangsheng and the experts from the Jiang clan directly rushed over, and a battle instantly erupted. As for Qin Wentian, he still stood there, as though he had been forgotten by everyone. For the time being, those who participated in this tempest were all at the 2nd and 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. Those at the 1st level of Heavenly Dipper weren't qualified, and those at the 4th level were still spectating. I don't have the time to wait for him here. At this moment, Qin Wentian had a carefree smile on his face. His silhouette flickered as he sped towards the direction of the largest battle. The violet lightning around Ouyang Guangxing towered up the skies. The experts from the Wang clan had bodies akin to divine weapons, and the experts from the Hua clan had incomparably exquisite innate techniques. Be careful of that person, that's the blood curse imprint. Someone noticed Qin Wentian's blood congealing at the center of his palms. After which, his palm imprint turned the color of blood as he reminded Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, leaving behind a series of afterimages as he blasted out with his palms. One of the experts from the Wang clan couldn't even react in time. The blood-colored palm imprint directly slammed into the center of the brows of an expert from the Wang clan, instantly devouring the life force of that expert. Go and kill him. The countenances of the experts from the Wang clan stiffened. Momentarily, a silhouette stepped out. This person was clad in a set of white divine armor and wielded a resplendent long spear in his hands. His aura was extremely powerful, indicating that he had a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. Wang Jian is an extremely powerful Heavenly Dipper sovereign of the Wang clan. He was once ranked within the top 10 of the Heavenly Fate rankings. Only to see Wang Jian walking over, his spear explosively piercing out. Qin Wentian abruptly spun around, only to see that the spear was like a speck of light, capable of penetrating through everything, directly piercing towards the center of his brows. That whistling sound of wind caused the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. Qin Wentian lifted his fist and punched out in rage. The terrifying might of his fist caused the long spear to deviate from its original position, but Wang Jian was also an extremely powerful character. His palms were incomparably stable, spinning the long spear in his hands as his silhouette flickered. Qin Wentian only felt the spear shooting towards him like a bolt of white lightning. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by as Qin Wentian retreated. At this moment, in the direction of the 9 mystical palace, a few experts stepped out with a wave of their hands, dashing towards Qin Wentian. These people all exuded a terrifying might of lightning, and as they punched out, the might of lightning converged into a lightning pearl, sealing off all of Qin Wentian's paths of retreat. those from the 9 Mystical Palace actually made their move. Do they want to stand on the same side as the great Solar Qin clan? The spectators only saw the lightning pearl exploding as a violet light flashed. Qin Wentian's path of retreat was sealed off, and the lightning long spear pierced through the lightning, about to reach Qin Wentian. Chapter 445. The 9 Mystical Palace's actions caused many to be taken aback. As a transcendent power located at the border of Grand Xia, the 9 Mystical Palace couldn't be compared to the Ouyang aristocrat clan. They could only be ranked at the bottom of the 36 transcendent powers. Their actions at this moment had an extraordinary significance. Although they only acted against the young man surnamed Di, it was still possible that they would be viewed as standing against the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Naturally, there was another possibility. They wanted to form an alliance with the great Solar Qin clan. It was said that the conflict between the 9 Mystical Palace and the Green Cloud Pavilion was getting deeper and deeper. Maybe, the 9 Mystical Palace wanted to find another way out. At this moment, the experts from the 9 Mystical Palace simultaneously acted against the young man surnamed Di, sealing his path of retreat. In addition to Wang Jian's spear strike, it was as though they wanted to kill that young man. As expected, Qin Wentian could use stellar transposition to escape. However, he didn't want to reveal too many of the ultimate arts of Grand Xia. If not, others might be able to guess his true identity. If he only used the blood curse imprint from the start till the end, it wouldn't arouse too much suspicion. Lifting his palms, Wang Jian abruptly grabbed onto the long spear. However, Wang Jian wasn't someone to be trifled with. With a twist of his palms, countless beams of spear light shot forth as a tyrannical will of mandates erupted forth. The rapidly revolving long spear seemed as though it wanted to devour everything in its path, transforming into a point of extreme killing intent as it continued shooting forth. Everything happened as fast as lightning. Qin Wentian's palms turned blood red as a destructive might gushed forth, causing Wang Jian's countenance to stiffen. And at this instant, Qin Wentian released his grip on the long spear as he slammed it towards Wang Jian. In that instant, Wang Jian didn't even have time to think. He directly retreated. Even if his long spear could pierce through Qin Wentian's body, the blood curse imprint would be imprinted on Qin Wentian's head. That was a sure-death situation. This wasn't something he wanted to see. However, the threat of Qin Wentian didn't vanish. Behind him, the experts from the 9 Mystical Palace condensed the power of lightning into lightning beads, shooting towards him. If he was struck by them, no matter how strong his physique was, he would still be blasted into smithereens. Pang! Qin Wentian stomped heavily on the ground. In the past, he couldn't use any of his techniques like the fiend transformation art. This feeling was extremely unpleasant, but there was nothing he could do about it. That step stomped through the air, and a stifling sword might directly bore down on the body of the expert from the 9 Mystical Palace, causing his astral novas to tremble uncontrollably. A terrifying sword might suddenly burst out from Qin Wentian's body. The dazzling sword will seem to sweep across the heavens and earth, flattening everything. Numerous sword rays appeared in front of him. He sent out a few palm imprints in succession, and the towering sword intent transformed into sword light. The lightning bead exploded, and the terrifying lightning blasted on the sword screen. The sword screen shattered. Qin Wentian's body flickered and retreated as fast as a gust of wind. So many forces encircling me like this D has truly broadened my horizons. Farewell. Qin Wentian said in a clear voice. Instantly, the rock flew over. Qin Wentian landed directly on the rock's back. In an instant, the rock spread its wings, and the two of them flew off into the distance. Trying to escape. Wang Jian and the rest snorted coldly as they sped away in pursuit. Let's go. Ouyang Guangxing roared. Momentarily, the direction of the battle started to change, as they sped off into the distance. The other experts from the Ouyang aristocrat clan wanted to chase after them, yet those from the great Solar Qin clan stepped out, blocking their path of retreat. Chen Fan coldly laughed, since the battle has already been left to them, let them settle it themselves. A raging wind gusted by, as more and more experts left the area. Chen Wang, Bai Qing, and the rest also started to move away. If they fought here, with the experts from both sides watching, it would be extremely difficult to kill their opponents. Since that was the case, they might as well find a new location and fight to their heart's content. Hence, in the airspace above Ginkgo, a magnificent scene appeared. A great rock soared through the air, leading the way. Behind it, there were countless experts chasing after it, all of them exuding a terrifying might. It's the experts from the various transcendent powers. Chen Wang, Wang Jian, and even Bai Qing from the Mystic Moon Hall are here. They're fighting again, but who is that person riding on the back of the great rock? Those on the ground all soared into the air, wanting to chase after the great rock. However, the speed of those experts was simply too fast. Unless one was an extremely powerful character, there was no way they could catch up to them. Although Little Rascal transformed into a great rock, it didn't increase its combat prowess. Still, its speed was extremely fast. Flapping its wings, Qin Wentian stood on the back of the great rock with his hands clasped behind his back. A cold smile could be seen on his face, as though there was a hint of playfulness in it. Little Rascal, go to the outskirts of Ginkgo, the further the better. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. After which, he sat down cross-legged on the back of the great rock, completely ignoring the pursuers behind him. Such an action seemed to contain a hint of provocation, causing Wang Jian and the rest to chase after him relentlessly. In the air, the raging winds howled. The number of people below grew smaller and smaller as they gradually moved away from the central region of Ginkgo. After a period of time, the city gates of Ginkgo could already be seen. The great rock didn't stop. It directly flew out of Ginkgo and continued speeding forward, crossing the ancient roads and rivers, arriving at a mountain range a few hundred miles away from Ginkgo. That's enough. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. Finally, the great rock swooped down, landing in the air above a small hill in the middle of the mountain range. It then turned around, as though it was waiting for the silhouette behind it. A sharp glint of light flickered unceasingly as Wang Jian's silhouette descended. Accompanying him were two experts from the Wang clan, all of whom had chased after Wang Jian. After which, the two experts from the Chen clan as well as the three from the Nine Mystical Palace arrived. The two experts from the Chen clan were also at the third level of Heavenly Dipper. Since Qin Wentian had killed many from the Chen clan, there was no way they would allow Qin Wentian to leave this place alive. Hence, they gave up on the other battlefields and chose to hunt down Qin Wentian. After these experts arrived, they immediately spread out their formation, surrounding Qin Wentian. Wang Jian then spoke, "Whoever kills this young man, the great rock shall belong to him." What do you all think? Agreed. The experts from the Chen clan nodded. Right. The experts from the Nine Mystical Palace also nodded in agreement. After which, a towering aura gushed forth from their bodies as they pressed down on Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian inclined his head, staring at the experts in the air as a terrifying light flickered in his eyes. Today, all of you shall remain here. Qin Wentian coldly spoke, his words causing a strange expression to appear on the faces of the crowd. This Qin Wentian was truly arrogant. They had so many experts on their side, how could it be easy for them to kill Qin Wentian? Yet this young man still dared to speak such words, wanting all of them to remain here. Simply boasting shamelessly. If you had fled for a few more days, maybe we wouldn't have pursued you so relentlessly. But since things have already reached this point, how can you still survive? A terrifying sharpness gushed forth from Wang Jian as his astral nova manifested, transforming into an incomparably sharp spear that seemed capable of annihilating everything. The experts from the Chen clan all unleashed their great solar universe energy, causing a resplendent light to flash about. The experts from the Nine Mystical Palace all had thunderous might radiating from them. Numerous lightning dragons coiled around their bodies, exuding an incomparably ferocious might. Only to see them descend together, stepping towards Qin Wentian. Their might bore down on Qin Wentian, not intending to give him any chance. Many of these experts had a cultivation base at the third level of Heavenly Dipper, yet none of them used their astral novas to directly attack. Evidently, they wanted to be the first to kill Qin Wentian. In another space, yellow sand could be seen billowing as the mountain peaks crumbled apart. Tens of thousands of meters away, a huge battle had already erupted. Evidently, this was the result of another wave of experts clashing violently against each other. Qin Wentian clenched his fists as a glint of hatred flickered in his eyes. Abruptly, it was as though a flame was ignited in his body, as though his blood was boiling unceasingly. A halo of light revolved around him, and in his eyes, the burning flames were as cold as ice. Abruptly, a gigantic sword appeared in Qin Wentian's hands. This sword was entirely black in color, and was forged from extremely heavy astral black crystals. It was over 10 meters long and weighed over 100,000 jin. It was unknown how heavy it was. What caused people to be astonished was that such a heavy gigantic sword was actually sharpened. The edge of the sword shimmered with a jet-black luster, as though a single slash from the sword would be able to sever a person into two. The expressions of the experts all stiffened. They had never heard of anyone in Grand Xia using such a gigantic sword before. Naturally, this was also what Qin Wentian wanted to see. His mandate of force and mandate of demons could be infused into the gigantic sword, and no one would be able to tell that he was Qin Wentian. Bzzz. Qin Wentian's silhouette soared up into the skies. The gigantic sword that weighed over 100,000 jin was casually held in his hands, and a brilliant light flashed as he dashed towards the three experts from the 9 mystical palace. The three of them coldly snorted. Lightning dragons erupted forth, their entire bodies radiating boundless might of lightning. The 9 mystical palace is about to vanish, yet you guys still dare to cause trouble in Ginkgo? Qin Wentian's voice was filled with a tyrannical coldness. The gigantic sword in his hands slashed out as a supreme sword might erupted forth from his body. His astral nova enveloped the three experts in front of him. Die! Qin Wentian spat out a single word. The gigantic sword sliced through the air, and when the three of them felt the supreme might of a king, they simultaneously attacked. Momentarily, a gigantic lightning dragon howled, wanting to devour the gigantic sword. But at the same instant, the gigantic sword hummed unceasingly, as though a terrifying black dragon had appeared. Pang! The void shockwave directly blasted into the body of one of the experts, instantly killing him. Qin Wentian's sword didn't pause at all, sweeping out horizontally. The other two experts retreated with explosive speed, yet the sword humming didn't stop. It was as though they could see a pair of incomparably sharp sword wings sweeping past their throats, causing fresh blood to spurt out from their wounds. In the blink of an eye, the three experts had all fallen. The experts from the Chen clan and Wang clan had already made their moves. However, the halo of light radiating from Qin Wentian grew even more resplendent. He turned and slashed out with his sword, completely disregarding all attacks. The gigantic sword transformed into a terrifying black dragon that descended from the skies, tearing apart the experts. The long spear in Wang Jian's hands pierced through the air, transforming into a beam of light, wanting to annihilate the black dragon. The experts from the Chen clan circulated their great solar universe energy to the max. Their gazes were fixed on Qin Wentian, yet when they saw his eyes, they couldn't help but shudder in fear. This young man had intentionally lured them out of Ginkgo. At this moment, they finally understood the meaning behind Qin Wentian's words. Spatial rend. Qin Wentian's gigantic sword slashed outwards, emanating a terrifying King Dao. A formless wave of destructive energy gushed forth, and with a thunderous boom, the two experts from the Chen clan groaned in agony. After which, their heart meridians were shattered as they coughed out fresh blood, dying with grievances. Chapter 446. In the blink of an eye, 5 powerful experts fell consecutively. Such a scene caused Wang Jian to feel a chill running down his spine. They had been tricked. This person had intentionally lured them here so that he could kill them. If not, with so many experts present, it would be impossible for Qin Wendian to kill them in front of so many people. However, the Qin clan and the Wang clan would never have thought of such an ending. Among the experts of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, they clearly held a great advantage. This was why they dared to block the path of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, allowing them to settle the battle themselves. That gigantic sword, what divine weapon is that? Wang Jian stared at the gigantic sword in Qin Wendian's hands. The might of that sword was boundless, capable of killing a living person. One must know that Heavenly Dipper sovereigns all had astral novas that were comparable to divine weapons, and were even more proficient in wielding them. Hence, unless Heavenly Dipper sovereigns had an extremely powerful divine weapon, they might as well not use it. For astral novas were much more powerful compared to divine weapons, and could be unleashed freely. However, the divine weapon of the young man surnamed Di seemed to be exceptionally powerful. In truth, Qin Wendian's gigantic sword wasn't some high-tier divine weapon. It was just that he had asked the White Deer Institute to forge a heavy and sharp divine weapon for him, allowing him to unleash his full strength, making others unable to tell how strong he was. Retreat! At this moment, Wang Jian roared. Momentarily, the three experts from the Wang clan all retreated, only to see Qin Wendian's countenance turning ice-cold. Executing the rock flash, his silhouette transformed into a great rock, instantly appearing in front of one of the experts. The gigantic sword slashed out, shattering the void. This was an innate technique he created himself. This innate technique incorporated the second level of the mandate of force, the void shockwave, into the third stance of the great dream halberd art, shattering the void. After which, he infused it with his tyrannical sword intent, borrowing the sword intent of the Tao of Kings into the gigantic sword. In addition to his own tyrannical strength, it was unknown how powerful the shockwave was. Even a third-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign would have their heart and meridians ruptured if they were struck by it. That person was struck by the void rend as an explosive sound rang out from his body. Despite the terrifying radiance of a divine weapon, he was still killed by the impact. In the blink of an eye, only Wang Jian and the last person were left. Both of them were taken aback, they didn't expect the combat prowess of this person to be so terrifying. The two of them hurriedly fled, only to see that Qin Wendian had executed stellar transposition as he used rock flash. His gigantic sword slammed into the body of the last person, instantly killing him. Only Wang Jian was left. "You can't get away." A cold voice rang out from behind Wang Jian, causing him to abruptly turn around. With a howl of rage, numerous divine weapons materialized in the air as they all erupted forth, piercing towards Qin Wendian. Boom! As the stellar transposition was executed, Qin Wendian's silhouette appeared directly in front of Wang Jian. A terrifying demonic chi gushed forth from his palms, as an incomparably tyrannical strength blasted the gigantic sword away. Wang Jian's countenance turned pale as he stared at Qin Wendian. Was this one of the ultimate arts of Grand Xia, stellar transposition? In the midst of his despair, a layer of armor appeared around Wang Jian's body. His astral novas were frenziedly released as he blasted them forward, the sharpness of the sword sweeping through everything. Wherever the gigantic sword passed by, Wang Jian's astral novas were all blasted apart, slamming into the barrier of light formed by Wang Jian's palms. A crisp cracking sound rang out as the black gigantic sword pierced through the body of Wang Jian, killing him. Little Rascal's silhouette flickered as it collected the interspatial rings of those who died. After which, it returned to the side of Qin Wendian and passed the interspatial ring to Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian patted Little Rascal on its head as he continued on his way. Over there, the battle was extremely intense. When Qin Wendian arrived at the battlefield, Bai Qing and Ouyang Guangsheng were currently fighting against Chen Wang. Chu Mang, Fan Lu and the rest were also fighting against their own opponents. Upon seeing the appearance of Qin Wendian, the gazes of the crowd all froze. Earlier, the number of experts pursuing Qin Wendian was the highest. There were at least 7 or 8 of them who were prepared to deal with him first. Yet now, He actually returned here. What about those experts who were pursuing him? As they thought of this, the hearts of the crowd abruptly turned cold as they involuntarily shivered. Among those who were pursuing him, there were several third-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. Qin Wendian had returned safely to the battlefield, yet there was no longer any commotion. What did this mean? Although the crowd didn't want to believe it, they still felt a chill down their spines. Only to see Qin Wendian's gaze landing on Qin Wang as he slowly stepped out. Qin Wang's strength was indeed powerful. His flame clone was able to suppress both Bai Qing and Ouyang Guangsheng. If it weren't for the fact that Bai Qing and Ouyang Guangsheng's attacks were extremely tyrannical, they would have already died under Qin Wang's hands. Not only that, from Qin Wang's aura, it seemed that he wasn't too far away from the third level of Heavenly Dipper. Although Qin Wang was ranked second, his combat prowess was still exceedingly high. With his combat prowess, it wouldn't be a problem for him to kill someone at the third level of Heavenly Dipper. At this moment, Qin Wendian was thinking in his heart that if Qin Wang died, the great solar Qin clan would definitely feel a heartache. Qin Wang, be careful. Someone in the crowd noticed Qin Wendian walking towards Qin Wang as he warned. Bzzz, a raging wind gusted by. The person who spoke earlier was in the midst of battle when he suddenly felt the sound of the wind whistling by. He instantly knew that he was in danger, but the experts from the Ouyang aristocrat clan were restricting him, causing him to have no time to react. He could only retaliate with an incomparably gigantic flaming palm imprint. Peng! The black-colored gigantic sword directly slashed apart the palm imprint, shattering it into pieces. The countenance of that person turned pale with fright. He instantly turned his palms and slammed them towards Qin Wendian's black-colored gigantic sword. At the instant the gigantic sword collided with the palm imprint, a terrifying shockwave blasted into his body. With a piercing sound, he spat out fresh blood as all his vitality was destroyed. Behind him, that expert from the Ouyang aristocrat clan blasted out a punch that directly landed on his body, extinguishing the last of his vitality. This person is so powerful. The hearts of the spectators turned even colder. With someone who could kill so many third-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns interfering in this battle, the situation would definitely be unsalvageable. Gather! Qin Wang roared. After blasting out a palm strike, he retreated. Momentarily, the experts from the Wang clan and the Qin clan all retreated, preparing to gather together. If not, they would be killed one by the young man surnamed Di. Qin Wang and the rest gathered together. The violent qi currents they exuded gave off a stifling pressure. Ouyang Guangsheng and the rest also rushed forward, unknowingly gathering together as well. They glanced at Qin Wendian only to hear Ouyang Guangsheng laughing, "Sir, your strength is so strong. Why don't we join forces and annihilate these people?" "That's exactly what I was thinking." Qin Wendian nodded. Although he wanted to reunite with Ouyang Guangsheng and the rest, he knew that it wasn't the right time yet. This time, he transformed into Di Tian and appeared in the sights of Grand Xia. If he didn't turn Grand Xia upside down, he wouldn't rest until he turned Grand Xia upside down. Chu Mang, Fan Le, the two of you control the entire situation. Ouyang Guangsheng roared. Fan Le and Chu Mang nodded in agreement. The two of them flew in two different directions as their astral arrows appeared. Now that the two of them had grown stronger and stronger, it was unknown how terrifying the might of their arrows were. They were like golden bolts of lightning, capable of reaping lives in the blink of an eye. "Brother Di, how about the two of us attack from the front?" Ouyang Guangsheng stared at Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian's combat prowess was tyrannical. If they joined forces with him to attack from the front, Bai Qing would act as the support, Chu Mang and Fan Le would pursue with their arrows, and the others would assist them in battle. Their combat prowess would definitely be terrifying. Naturally. Qin Wendian nodded, his hands gripping tightly onto the black greatsword. Beside him, Ouyang Guangsheng and the rest, the other experts all released their astral novas as they floated in the air, exuding a terrifying might. The experts from both sides didn't dare to move recklessly. At this moment, the experts from both sides were gathered together. If they were to move recklessly, they would instantly become the target of the attacks. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of arrows piercing through the air rang out. Abruptly, a series of astral arrows shot forth. 9 arrows shot out simultaneously, a total of 18 arrows instantly enveloped everyone within. Not only that, after this round of arrows, there were still more arrows shooting out. Chen Wang and the rest immediately waved their hands to block the incoming arrows. Both Qin Wendian and Ouyang Guangxing moved. Ouyang Guangxing's entire body erupted forth with a towering might of lightning fire. Above his head, a gigantic lightning saber materialized, congregating the lightning bolts together, frenziedly compressing together, causing each and every strand of lightning to contain an overwhelming destructive might. Careful, that's the Thunder God's slash. Chen Wang's countenance stiffened. The Thunder God's slash was one of the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia, the strongest single-target attack. Even with Ouyang Guangxing's strength, a single slash would be able to drain half of his Yuan Fu dry of astral energy. One could very well imagine the destructive might of this strike. Generally speaking, innate techniques that expended a large amount of astral energy would definitely be extremely powerful. Not all innate techniques would be able to expend a large amount of astral energy. However, the Thunder God's slash was able to condense a terrifying amount of astral energy. The blood in Qin Wendian's body seemed to be seething with rage. Taking a step forward, the might of his astral novas seemed to be able to crush the astral novas of his opponents. The black-colored greatsword in his hand exuded a terrifying might, as though it was prepared to coordinate with Ouyang Guangxing's attack at any moment. Pang! Stellar transposition, Ouyang Guangxing's silhouette directly vanished, reappearing right in front of Chen Wang and the rest. The Thunder God's slash directly slashed out, splitting the void into 2. Several people's astral novas were directly severed, while the others hurriedly retreated. Qin Wendian appeared almost at the same instant. His black-colored greatsword unleashed a spatial laceration as a terrifying sword shockwave swept through the air, lacerating everything in its path. Cool. The destructive power of the 2 of them caused Fan Lu to howl in excitement. Arrows shot out from his body, their speed incomparably fast. One of the astral novas failed to evade in time and was pierced through the center of his brows. After all, Fan Li's arrows could change direction. Pang! 2 beams of astral light flashed. Chu Mang executed stellar transposition after shooting out his arrows, cleaving towards his opponents. Other than him, Bai Qing also executed stellar transposition, executing the 9 slashes of the Purgatory Saber art. Instantly, fresh blood splattered through the air. Tragic, the explosive power of the collision caused the spectators to have no time to react. It was too tragic. These people were all proficient in the ultimate art of Grand Xia, stellar transposition. From the very beginning, the outcome of this battle was already determined. Chen Wang and the 2 from the Chen clan were fine, because they too were proficient in stellar transposition. When the Thunder Gods slashed towards them, they had already dodged it. However, this undoubtedly weakened the resistance of the other astral novas. The combined might of the Thunder God's slash was instantly disintegrated, and 3 of them were instantly slain while the other 3 were injured. In the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, the experts from the various transcendent powers were still in a stalemate. But at this moment, an expert from the Chen clan had an extremely unsightly expression on his face. Chen Wang had actually sent out a distress signal. Not good. That expert instantly turned and fled. The Ouyang aristocrat clan and the others couldn't help but to reveal a sharp glint in their eyes when they saw the experts from the Chen clan turning and fleeing. Stop them. A cold voice rang out, instantly turning the situation around. It was the Chen clan's alliance that wanted to send reinforcements, yet the Ouyang aristocrat clan's alliance wanted to intercept them. Such a scene caused the spectators to have strange looks on their faces. What was going on over there? The experts from the Chen clan and Wang Jian should have the advantage, right? Chapter 447. In the ancient kingdom, the situation was reversed. The experts of the Great Solar Qin clan were facing an encirclement, but they didn't hesitate to split up and break through the encirclement. After which, they sped towards the outskirts of Ginkgo. And in the mountain range outside of Ginkgo, the situation was already very clear. Chen Wang and the rest retreated step by step. At this moment, the experts on their side were at an absolute disadvantage. Go! Chen Wang turned and fled in the direction he came from. The silhouettes of those beside him flickered as Qin Wendian and the rest naturally chased after him with lightning speed. Bzzz. Astral light flashed as Chen Wang directly executed stellar transposition. His silhouette appeared in front of Qin Wendian. This person wielded a black-colored greatsword and was extremely powerful. Earlier, if it wasn't for him, the situation wouldn't have been so one-sided. Before leaving, Chen Wang wanted to kill this brat as well. The instant he appeared in front of Qin Wendian, he blasted out a lava-like palm imprint, causing the entire space to be engulfed in lava. Qin Wendian's body was about to be ignited by the will of the mandate. However, how strong was Qin Wendian's perception? The instant Chen Wang executed stellar transposition, he had already sensed it. The palm imprint on his left hand turned the color of blood as it blasted forth, containing the power of destruction within. Chen Wang's countenance stiffened as astral light erupted forth once more. Because he was afraid of the blood curse imprint, he didn't dare to clash head-on with it. If not, both sides would suffer grievous injuries. But just as his silhouette appeared in another dimension, a whistling sound filled the air as a heaven-piercing sword might enveloped him. That black-colored greatsword was hurled towards Qin Wendian, wanting to cleave him into two. At the same time, Fan Lu and Chu Mang's arrows also descended upon Qin Wendian, aiming to cleave him into two. Chen Wang's countenance turned ashen as he executed stellar transposition once more, fleeing in another direction. Leave him to me. Qin Wendian spoke, as he dashed towards the direction of Chen Wang. Ouyang Guangsheng could sense the confidence in Qin Wendian's voice. He nodded his head, and the group of them continued their pursuit. Chen Wang was proficient in the stellar transposition technique, and his combat prowess was also exceedingly high. Ouyang Guangsheng had to admit that it was still impossible for him to contend against Chen Wang. Even if they continued to hold the absolute advantage, it would be easier said than done if they wanted to kill Chen Wang. This young man surnamed D had actually managed to escape unscathed from the pursuit of so many experts. Those people never appeared again. Perhaps he really could bring about the end of the Qin king. Ouyang Guangsheng, Bai Qing and the rest continued their pursuit, while Qin Wendian advanced in the direction of Chen Wang. Little Rascal appeared beneath Qin Wendian, and with a flap of its wings, a raging wind blew, its speed incomparably fast. Qin Wendian's perception was locked onto Chen Wang. Even for the current Chen Wang, there was a limit to how far he could travel in an instant using stellar transposition. After all, stellar transposition was only an innate technique that allowed one to increase one's speed, it wasn't true spatial teleportation. It was impossible for him to escape from Qin Wendian's pursuit. However, as the two of them sped away, Chen Wang discovered that Qin Wendian was the only one chasing after him. A cold glint of killing intent involuntarily flickered in Chen Wang's eyes. Qin Wendian continued advancing, yet his countenance was as calm as ever. There wasn't the slightest hint of panic or nervousness on his face. His curled lips were as sharp as the edge of a blade. Not long after, the two of them were already an unknown distance away from the other group. Chen Wang's silhouette landed on top of a small hill, as he turned his head to stare at Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian halted as well, only to see Chen Wang's calm eyes flickering with a hint of mockery. His hands were clasped behind his back as he stared at Qin Wendian, who would have thought that someone would actually die from stupidity. From Chen Wang's point of view, Qin Wendian chasing after him alone was an act of stupidity and foolishness. At this moment, his gaze was filled with unmasked disdain and mockery. The great solar bloodline in his body gushed forth, as a scorching heat akin to magma erupted forth with him as the center. The yellow soil beneath his feet was directly incinerated into dust, evaporating into thin air. One could very well imagine how high the temperature of Qin Wang's body was at this moment. At the same instant, two flaming giants manifested from his body. Although Qin Wang was arrogant, he wasn't an idiot. Qin Wentian was able to escape unscathed from the pursuit of so many people, and even managed to kill his opponents. His combat prowess was extremely high, but in a one-on-one battle, only death awaited him. After I kill you, I will kill all those who came here today, not leaving a single one alive. As the sound of Qin Wang's voice faded, his fourth astral nova appeared. It was in the form of a magma giant, and the magma around it flowed like liquid, as though it could disintegrate at any moment. In addition to his mandate of fire, the mandate of hardening, this fourth astral nova had the ability to transform. Go! Qin Wang pointed his finger at Qin Wentian, and momentarily, the flaming giants all rushed towards Qin Wentian. The magma giant directly blasted out with a palm, as the magma on its body transformed into liquid droplets that shot towards Qin Wentian. Bai Qing and Ouyang Guangxing were both proficient in stellar transposition, hence they were able to keep him occupied. But Qin Wang was confident that killing the person in front of him wouldn't be a problem at all. Qin Wentian's black-colored greatsword swept out, transforming into a screen of swords that blocked the incoming magma. Stepping out, a terrifying sword might gushed forth as his black-colored greatsword slashed out, piercing into the body of the magma giant. However, the magma giant directly melted into liquid, flowing towards his black-colored greatsword as it continued to lunge towards Qin Wentian. At the same time, the other two flaming giants also blasted out, blasting out with their palms. A cold smile flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes as astral energy abruptly erupted forth. His silhouette vanished from sight as the great sword in his hand pierced towards Qin Wang's body. Qin Wang's countenance drastically changed as he explosively retreated. A towering great solar radiance gushed forth from his body as the flames of the heavens blazed forth. Go! Qin Wentian's palms slammed out as the great sword pierced through the air, aiming for Qin Wang. Pang! Stellar transposition, Qin Wang's silhouette vanished from sight. At this moment, his heart was filled with shock. How could this be? Qin Wentian had also cultivated stellar transposition. At the instant Qin Wang's silhouette flickered, a blood-colored palm imprint blasted out towards him. Qin Wang's countenance drastically changed as he hurriedly executed stellar transposition once more. However, it was useless. Just as he steadied himself, Qin Wentian appeared once more, using the same blood curse imprint as well, exuding a towering blood-colored might that could instantly turn a person into a pile of bones. Peng, 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 the two silhouettes unceasingly executed stellar transposition. Finally, Qin Wang felt that the yuan fu in his body was about to be completely depleted. This time around, he directly teleported to the side of the lava giant and no longer dodged. His great solar universe palm imprint erupted forth with the power to incinerate the mountains and boil the seas, slamming towards the blood-colored palm imprint. Boom! The two palm imprints collided. Qin Wang instantly felt the flesh and blood on his arm corroding away. The corrosive might was extremely tyrannical, there was no way to block it at all. The blood curse imprint was one of the most tyrannical innate techniques in Grand Xia. At the same time, the might of his great solar bloodline gushed into Qin Wentian's arm. However, he could clearly sense an even more terrifying surge of sword might from Qin Wentian's great solar bloodline, howling in rage, wanting to tear him apart. The lava giant transformed into a pool of lava, lunging towards Qin Wentian, wanting to bury him within the lava. However, Qin Wentian's astral light erupted as Qin Wentian once again executed stellar transposition. The sound of a sword keening rang out, and Qin Wang felt a sense of impending doom. Luckily, he was already prepared. With a flick of his fingers, he crushed something in his palm, causing a fiery glow to soar up into the skies, enveloping his body within. The sword light that was about to land on Qin Wang's neck was actually blocked by a screen of flames, emitting a crisp sound. This caused Qin Wentian's countenance to stiffen as he retreated, staring at the terrifying screen of flames that enveloped Qin Wang. Chen Wang had the potential to become the future leader of the great solar Qin clan. He naturally had a life-saving treasure on him. This treasure was exceedingly precious, and when Chen Wang was in a disadvantageous position in the earlier battles, he only sent a message to his clan members and didn't use it. But now that he was in a life-and-death situation, he had no choice but to use it. Staring at Qin Wentian, a terrifying killing intent gushed forth from Chen Wang. "Who are you exactly?" Chen Wang stomped the ground, staring at Qin Wentian. This person wasn't only proficient in the blood curse imprint, he had also cultivated stellar transposition. Qin Wentian stared at the fiery glow, only to see him turning around abruptly and riding on the back of the great rock, leaving the area. Chen Wang's eyes flickered as a ball of flames shot up into the skies. After which, he dashed out, chasing after Qin Wentian. From afar, an expert from the great solar Qin clan who had just broken out of the encirclement noticed the fiery glow in the skies. His silhouette flickered as he dashed over. Not long later, Qin Wentian was blocked by a middle-aged man at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper Sovereign. Chen Wang. Chen Xiao stared at Chen Wang in disbelief. To think that Chen Wang was forced to use his life-saving treasure. "Uncle Xiao, this man is proficient in stellar transposition. He has some secrets on him, kill him." Chen Wang spoke coldly. Chen Xiao nodded as he dashed towards Qin Wentian. The great rock abruptly soared up into the skies, chasing after Qin Wentian. "Where do you think you're going?" Chen Xiao and Chen Wang soared up into the skies as well, unwilling to let Qin Wentian escape. This man was a demon-level talent and had secrets on him. They had to kill him no matter what. The three of them, as well as the great rock, soared into the skies, gradually descending. Clouds and mist permeated the air, blocking the vision of others. However, Chen Xiao and Chen Wang's eyes shone with a fiery light as they stared fixedly at Qin Wentian and the great rock. Boom! From Qin Wentian, a towering might from his bloodline abruptly erupted forth, as a demonic aura that would cause the hearts of people to tremble violently gushed forth. His physique grew taller and taller as an aura of an overlord gushed forth from him. "Michem." Chen Xiao furrowed his brows. He stared at the screen of light around Chen Wang that was growing weaker and weaker. He couldn't help but remind Chen Wang, there's something strange about this man. Why don't you leave first?" Chen Wang shook his head. In such a situation, Qin Wentian still wanted to flee. He had no way to accept such humiliation. The great rock didn't know how high the heavens were, it continued soaring higher and higher into the skies. The screen of light around Chen Wang grew weaker and weaker, causing Chen Xiao to furrow his brows. Qin Wentian seemed to know that the screen of light around Chen Wang had a time limit and was intentionally exhausting him. "Chen Wang." Chen Xiao called out once more. Chen Wang furrowed his brows, finding it hard to accept. But when he felt the screen of light weakening, he could only stop. Boom! An aura at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper gushed forth from the silhouette in the skies. The great rock stopped as Qin Wentian stared downwards, like the sovereign of the skies. The blood in his body seethed, akin to a demon. Chen Wang stared at this silhouette, he felt a sense of déjà vu abruptly. Chen Wang's countenance drastically changed as an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. Such an aura, he had once seen it on the arena platform of the Vermilion Bird Heavenly Fate ranking. Chapter 448. That devilishly handsome silhouette, a great rock. And the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia, the blood curse imprint and stellar transposition. Although Qin Wentian wasn't proficient in any of the 9 ultimate arts, now that he had obtained the divine steel, he should be the same as Ouyang Guangsheng and the others, proficient in any of the 9 ultimate arts. As he thought of this, Chen Wang inclined his head and stared at the silhouette standing on the back of the great rock. His heart pounded violently as his countenance instantly turned pale. It was him. It had to be him. He didn't die in the Pill Emperor Hall. Now, he had transformed into another person and returned. His bloodline seemed to have grown even stronger, like the sovereign of all demons. The eruption of his bloodline actually allowed him to break through the limits of his cultivation base, exuding the aura of a third-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign. Thinking of this person's combat prowess, Chen Wang abruptly called out to Qin Shao, "It's Qin Wentian, Uncle Shao, let's go." Qin Wentian. Upon hearing this name, Qin Shao's heart trembled. This name was simply too familiar. Over a year ago, which corner of Grand Xia wasn't talking about the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings, Qin Wentian? This person was actually Qin Wentian. A supreme sharpness erupted forth as the king's sword manifested. This was none other than Qin Wentian's astral nova. Pang! Stellar transposition, Qin Wentian vanished from sight with the king's sword in his hand. Chen Zhao's countenance drastically changed as he too executed stellar transposition, turning and fleeing. The two of them transformed into motes of astral light, and finally, the keening of a sword rang out as fresh blood splattered down from the skies. A silhouette whistled past as Qin Shao descended from the skies. This person had a cultivation base at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper. If he fought against Qin Wentian head-on, he might be able to hold out for some time. However, the first thing he thought of was to flee. Under the effect of stellar transposition, Qin Wentian's tyrannical perception captured every movement of his. His mandate of sword melody erupted forth, severing his life. At the instant Qin Shao fled, Chen Wang had already fled in the opposite direction, yet he was intercepted by the Great Rock. The speed of the Great Rock was exceedingly fast, it actually managed to delay Chen Wang for a few moments. At this moment, Qin Wentian descended from the skies, walking towards Chen Wang with unmasked killing intent in his eyes. "Qin Wentian, if you let me go today, I will definitely convince my clan to let the grudges between us be written off." Chen Wang stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. At this moment, the most important thing to him was to preserve his life. Earlier when he was defeated in the hands of Qin Wentian, he didn't hesitate to use a life-saving technique. Because of this, in addition to the fact that Qin Shao was at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper, he chased after Qin Wentian to kill him. Yet, he had never imagined that his opponent would be Qin Wentian. He had been concealing his true strength, and now, it was already too late for regrets. If he knew that this person was Qin Wentian, he wouldn't have chased after him to this extent. Sword intent permeated the air. Qin Wentian didn't reply to Chen Wang. Stepping out, a stifling pressure enveloped Chen Wang. Although he had lured Chen Wang and Qin Shao away from the others, he still had to kill them as soon as possible. In this world, anything could happen. Back then when he ascended the Pill Emperor Hall, who would have thought that he would be able to cleave the Pill Emperor Hall into two with a single strike? Hence, he could be arrogant, but he wouldn't underestimate his opponent. Pang! Astral light erupted as Chen Wang's silhouette abruptly appeared in front of Qin Wentian. The lava giant dashed out, transforming into liquid lava as it lunged towards Qin Wentian. Chen Wang wasn't a benevolent person, he had already prepared himself for the worst when he spoke. Bzzz. The wind whistled as Qin Wentian's sword flashed, piercing through Chen Wang's throat. Chen Wang's body stiffened as he clutched his throat with both hands. An expression of unwillingness could be seen in his eyes. He was unwilling, he was Chen Wang, a heaven's chosen of the Qin clan. He was unwilling, he had the potential to become the future leader of the Qin clan. He had already obtained an ancient medallion, he would have the chance to leave Grand Xia and head to the sacred ground to temper himself. But now, the arrogant him was about to die. When he thought back to the past, everything felt like a dream. Ever since he heard of Qin Wentian's name, his life seemed to have changed. It was like a nightmare. He still remembered the first time he met Qin Wentian. It should have been at the Qin clan. From afar, he cast a glance at Qin Wentian who had entered the Qin clan together with the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Qin Wentian had challenged a few youths from the Qin clan, displaying his extraordinary strength. But at that time, he didn't even bother to look at Qin Wentian. Never would he have imagined that the weak-looking young man would become his nightmare. After that, Qin Wentian started to display his brilliance in the heavenly fate rankings, defeating him and claiming the first position. From then on, he, Chen Wang, had to live in the shadow of Qin Wentian, and now, he had to live in the shadow of Qin Wentian. Before his death, he suddenly thought of a sentence. How many outstanding characters were there in Grand Xia, but how many of them could stand at the peak, looking down on all the other mountains? Chen Wang closed his eyes as his body descended from the air. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, and with a wave of his hand, Chen Wang's body was swept up into the air. After which, Qin Wentian carried Qin Shao's body with him as well. Only after that did he land on the back of the great rock and soared up into the clouds, flying towards the horizons. A day later, the news of yesterday's battle shook the entire Ginkgo continent. Ouyang Guangsheng and the majority of the experts returned safely to their respective clans. However, the experts from the Qin clan, Hua clan, Wang clan, as well as the 9 mystical palace, didn't return. In a battle between transcendent powers, it would still be fine if both sides were in dire straits. But when one side was completely annihilated, the atmosphere was extremely heavy. Before the start of the Heavenly Fate rankings, it was as though a storm was brewing in the air. Especially in the midst of the great solar Qin clan, there was an extremely conspicuous character, Qin Wang. The heavens chosen of the great solar Qin clan, Qin Wang, had disappeared and never returned. It was rumored that before he disappeared, he had sent out a distress signal. After which, the members of the Qin clan broke out of the encirclement to search for him, yet they couldn't find him. Not even his corpse was found. Even a 4th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign, Qin Shao, who had gone to search for Qin Wang, had never returned. Although Qin Wang's radiance was suppressed by Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian, he was still the 2nd ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings for 2 consecutive years. There was no need to doubt that he was a heaven's chosen, and he was one of the candidates to become the future leader of the great solar Qin clan. His disappearance, one could very well imagine what kind of storm it would create. Right now, the Ouyang aristocrat clan and the other transcendent powers were all locked in their doors, and were even sending experts from their own clans to deal with the situation. Most probably, the great solar Qin clan was already discussing their next move. Within the great solar Qin clan, in a majestic great hall, several silhouettes were gathered. The person in the lead had a dignified countenance, yet a sinister look could be seen in his eyes. Has the investigation been completed? That person asked. Not yet, we're currently keeping an eye on those who participated in the battle, and are preparing to hunt them down at any moment. Chen Fan replied. The person in the lead nodded his head lightly. Chen Wang had already died, there was no doubt about this point. However, they had to find out who the culprit was. Since Chen Wang has already died, prepare to select a new successor to be nurtured. Also, the medallion on Chen Wang's body must be recovered at all costs. Yes. Everyone nodded their heads, they understood the importance of the medallion on Chen Wang's body. They absolutely couldn't lose it. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen so soon after the medallion was bestowed to Chen Wang? Seems like they were after the medallion. If not, who would be able to kill Chen Wang and Qin Shao? Someone stated, his words causing many to nod their heads in agreement. Maybe this conflict was a plot against the medallion. If that was the case, things would be even more troublesome. First, prepare to control those who participated in the battle yesterday. We'll know after we interrogate a few more people. If there's really someone who is after the medallion, we have to find out which power it is. This medallion isn't something they can swallow for themselves. The person in the lead commanded. The Ouyang aristocrat clan, Mystic Moon sect, Jiang clan, as well as the other transcendent powers, had been in seclusion for the past few days. They had never imagined that Qin Wang would die. Not only that, the Qin clan seemed to have mobilized a terrifying force to monitor their movements. It was as though they were truly enraged. At this moment, they had to be extremely careful. However, the Qin clan didn't dare to launch an all-out war so easily. They were very clear on how terrifying the consequences would be if they started a war. No one dared to be careless. To Qin Wentian, he still didn't know what happened in Ginkgo. At this moment, he was arranging the resources he obtained from the interspatial ring. Naturally, the majority of them were Yuan meteor stones. Stellar martial cultivators needed to accumulate Yuan meteor stones for their cultivation. The higher their cultivation base, the more Yuan meteor stones they would need. Yesterday, after killing so many Heavenly Dipper sovereigns, the amount of Yuan meteor stones he obtained had greatly surprised him. At the same time, there were also many other innate techniques and treasures. However, to him, there weren't many that he could use. At this moment, an ancient medallion appeared in Qin Wentian's hands. This medallion emanated an extremely mysterious aura, as though it was extraordinary. This medallion was obtained from Qin Wang. Qin Wentian didn't know what use it had, but he knew that Qin Wang had placed the medallion in the best location in his interspatial ring. From this, one could tell how important this medallion was to Qin Wang. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered. He was no longer a greenhorn, and had experienced many things over the years. He could clearly sense how extraordinary this medallion was. Attempting to probe the medallion with his consciousness, Qin Wentian discovered that he couldn't do so at all. There was a mysterious energy blocking his consciousness from entering the medallion. Since Qin Wang placed so much importance on this medallion, I should capture an expert from the Qin clan and interrogate him. Qin Wentian kept the medallion and stood up. His silhouette flickered as he once again sped towards Ginkgo. The lines on his face wriggled as Little Rascal transformed into a demonic lion, making it less conspicuous. After yesterday's battle, he still didn't know what the situation was like in Ginkgo. He naturally had to be more careful. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.